Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast. It's dedicated to making you a faster cyclist, the Ask a Cycling Coach podcast presented by TrainerRoad. I'm Coach Jonathan Lee with our head coach, Chad Timmerman.
Hi, everybody.
Wearing a very cool hat. I think it's pretty unique.
Is that signed by somebody?
Yeah, it's, was it the Red Devils?
Red Devils?
Yeah, so it's Axel Merckx, his,
His academy, right?
yeah, junior cycling academy. So basically their intent is just to get kids on bikes, not necessarily to pursue it from a performance angle.
Yeah.
And they're apparently the biggest youth cycling club in BC.
And it's signed by Axel Merckx.
That's right.
It's
Legit
pretty awesome.
signed.
Yeah.
Probably the coolest name ever. Axel
Yeah,
Merckx. Yeah,
I
yeah.
know, right?
And that's our CEO, Nate Pearson.
Hello.
We are going to answer more of your cycling and triathlon related questions today, ones that you've submitted, and you can do so at trainerroad.com/podcast. You can join all of us, whether you're a listener of the podcast or a cyclist or triathlete, anything else. A person just likes to dig into the analytical side of cycling at forum.trainerroad.com. And in fact, if you go there now and you search for episode 183, you will find a post that's actually dedicated to this. And producer Ian will be pushing things up right now. As we talk, he'll be sharing links or photos or anything else. And we'll have discussions there based on this episode. So you can check that out. And you can also join us live. Right now, people are joining us. It's almost always every Thursday at 8 a.m. Next week will actually be a day earlier on Wednesday. But it's usually Thursdays at 8 a.m. Pacific. And you can join us on Facebook and YouTube. And you can ask some live questions. And then we usually take some time after we record the podcast to kind of off the cuff just have some fun answering those questions. So join us live. We'd love that. With that, I think the first thing that we should get into is talking about all the things that we've been releasing. For those that don't know, trainerroad.com, you can find out everything that we do there if you're just stumbling across this podcast here. And we focus on making people faster through our software. And we've released a bunch of new features around our calendar. We kind of want to talk about those, right?
We have a training calendar launched, and we have a whole bunch of features coming out. And the ones that we've done recently, you can now copy workouts. There's a little duplicate button. It's going to change to say copy, but it's up there.
Because I have a weekend ride that I basically repeat every time. And now I don't have to recreate it every time. I can just,
Exactly.
Sandy.
We've also added the ability to do some stuff right there from the calendar. So editing your TSS, if you don't have a power meter, you can estimate your TSS for a ride right there on the calendar. You can also edit some details right there in the calendar, like change the FTP. That's handy if you have like a different indoor and outdoor FTP. We don't recommend that, but some people do it. So you can, if you click on it, there's a little like edit button now in there. You can also exclude it from personal records if you want. You can move the plan starts around. So the plan starts are no longer connected to the first workout in the plan. And what was happening is you could apply a TrainerRoad plan to your calendar, and then the first week you could say, well, I'm not going to actually do this outside, and you could like make those outside workouts. But what would happen is the plan start would like follow the first TrainerRoad workout in that plan, so it would get moved down.
got it.
So now it's just like an annotation. It means it's just a little block that you can click and drag and put anywhere you want. We've also gone through your history and added all the plan starts to your calendar, so you can see all of those. There's not at the moment a very good way to see it like all at once, but if you go into forum.trainer.com, I have a post in there where a soon-to-be-released feature where you can see all your plans and races on the TSS chart at top, like over time, and that's very helpful. You can also copy and paste a week. So if you've got like a recovery week or, I don't know, any kind of week that you like, you can copy and paste it. And you can also move a week.
I did that to extend a peak for me. So basically, I looked at it and I end 1 week before Nationals because Nationals is slightly later than I thought.
Yep.
So I went in and I pushed that and then copied that taper week of the specialty plan right in.
Yeah, and you could also, Chad, couldn't you like, would you say if someone wants to extend something, like let's say they want to extend a build, would they copy maybe the fifth week or the seventh week or something, or would you copy the first week so you have like almost like a longer taper, or kind of how you feel?
You could go any way.
Yeah.
Yeah, just duplicate it and maybe even just bump up the workout versions in the subsequent weeks sort of thing.
Yeah, it might be like if you're feeling particularly fatigued at the end of this thing, you might not want to copy the hardest week.
Yeah, you could do the first week then or the second week.
Yeah, totally.
Just don't copy the ramp test. Like
Yeah.
replace that one because you don't want to do the ramp test right on the last week.
Yeah, no point.
And also the TSS chart now is collapsible for more room. So if you're on a small monitor, you click a little button and it collapses and it remembers that between. That's more of a, it's both looking at history and trends and also navigation. But sometimes you don't need that. You just want to see your current week. So now that goes up and down.
We've got so many more exciting things that we're working on that
I know, but you can't talk about.
Yeah. We just wanted to share, all of it. Anyways, Nate, when you were gone, we took the liberty of so we had Pete on the podcast, didn't we, Chad? And we took the liberty of laying out
Talking some trash.
Worst episode ever.
about the 24 hours in the Old Pueblo, which is coming up. It's an epic rides race.
Yeah.
That's really our first target event for the year. We're all looking forward to it. It's going to be a ton of fun. Even though Chad and I have done a relay race, and I think that we just drove back across the Utah-Nevada desert in total silence because it was so rough.
It's pretty draining.
We're excited for this one.
I think you
It's going to be different,
In Nevada, recreational marijuana is legal, and I think you guys were high when you had this thing.
It was not, no.
I've got a lot of problems with you people, and you're going to hear about them right now.
All right, so this is going to be you laying out. You're going to pick apart our strategy.
Rebuttals, yes. Okay, first, I know it was a few episodes ago, but I took notes. So one thing you guys said is, and I was in a hotel room listening to this live, I think. And I was like,
fuming the whole time.
What are you guys talking about?
It's a mission success then. Good job.
First thing, talking about who's going to go first. Obviously, it's Jonathan. None of us are going to be faster than Jonathan. Jonathan is a super fast mountain bike starter. He's out of the four of us, too. You have to run a little bit. You're the fastest runner. Yeah. You can start quick.
It's a Le Mans start.
That meaning you have to run to your bike.
Yep.
And it's a fairly long run, right?
I don't know. I don't think it's that long. I don't know. Maybe a couple hundred yards or something.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, 24 Hours in Old Pueblo, too, is a 24-hour mountain bike race where we're going to switch off laps. Laps are probably going to be about 110 for us.
Yeah, an hour, 10 minutes.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
And it tends to, it's not like you kind of drag, you kind of go downhill-ish, but very gradually for the first half, and then you go uphill-ish gradually for the second half. There's no crazy, super steep climbs or anything like that. So it's a more constant power. There's nothing that's overly technical about the course too, which is probably good on a 24-hour race. You don't want something that's really gnarly.
Yeah.
And it's known for definitely it's known for the party surrounding it too, and just the fun event atmosphere. So it's it's a fun event where people go and they take it super seriously. Other people just have a ton of fun. But it's kind of like Burning Man meets bikes. It's a pop-up city in the middle of the desert.
There will be no fun on our team. So just kidding. We were going to enter the corporate division, but then looking at the results, the corporate division looks like it's teams of 7, or 8.
Yeah, you can kind of have whatever size team you want.
Yeah, it doesn't appear to be a limit.
Seems like.
Yeah, well, we don't really know. All we know is more than 4 people and some of the winners of that. So we have this plan to have a whole bunch of pros, but that's not this year. This year, we should do the 4-person open.
Yeah.
It's going to be us 3 and Chad, and Pete. And so we're going to be in that division as long as that is switch divisions.
Yeah.
And we're going to try to go fast. We're not going to be we're going to be at 95, 97, 98.
Yeah.
We're not going to go super crazy and yell at each other, but we're going to have some fun.
Yeah.
So anyways, start order. You should go, after the first lap, it's going to be so spread out. You guys said something about, knocking elbows. You said something like, I should go last because there's carrots. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Carrots.
People
up the road.
There's
Rabbits.
always going to, in a 24-hour race, there's always going to be it. But you want to have your faster people not have to pass people in mountain biking.
Right.
So what we should go for is an order of quickness. And something about elbows rubbing, there's no going to be, after the first 45 seconds of riding, there's going to be no elbows rubbing on a...
Yeah, maybe. Single track, Got to rub elbows with folks and you pass them sometimes.
How many competitors are we talking?
Yeah, it's a lot. That's
okay,
all
but
I
after
know.
the first lap with Jonathan, there might be a string of people.
Yeah.
You think about Carson City Off-Road or something. Well, there's a lot. You're starting with thousands of people.
Yeah.
And then you get into a line. You're not rubbing elbows with people.
But I just think the multi-lap aspect of it is going to lend to a lot of overlap.
Yeah.
You're going to be passing people, yes.
Yeah, and a fair amount, I don't know entirely, but it seems like from Google Earth images, it looks like a fair amount of this is double track too. So
that's easy enough.
Yeah, I've watched videos online, and there are definitely places to pass people.
Yeah.
But we don't want to put we wouldn't want to have the slowest person go first and then Jonathan try to pass through all the slower people.
Right.
We want to go fastest to slowest. There's 2 strategies there. One is you never know, because it's time-based, who's going to be on your last laps.
Yeah.
So if we had a choice to have somebody have an extra lap, it would be Jonathan if we keep rotating through.
Yeah.
Right. And then you'd want to go down the way.
So your order, as I gather it, would be me first.
And then who's second?
You.
Maybe.
Okay.
So Probably, right? Like
Yeah.
most likely, I am the second fastest. Just
Okay.
kidding. Pete has a
In
good
that case,
chance.
Pete has a great chance.
Chad, you do too.
And
Like
Chad's a great rider. and
depends
he's
on how
fit, too.
motivated you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get on the bike. We'll see. The motivation will come. I know it will. It's just a question of how far out, and how much time I'll have left to train.
The way I think we should
Can
Pete
do a
and
little
I-
cramming.
There are some mountain bike races in January in California. I think Pete's going to come to it too.
Yeah.
We race each other. That's a good thing. If Pete beats me there, he should go ahead of me. If I beat Pete, I should go ahead of him.
Right.
Like
So
very.
the order afterward doesn't really matter a whole lot. You're saying.
It does to an
Kind
extent too. The other part is if we're really close. We talked about at night. I think that we should go 2-2, 2-2. Like
To let other people sleep.
Yep.
More time.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I was thinking on that, Chad and I go to bed pretty early. So it would probably be easier for Chad and I, like if it went Jonathan and Pete, if you guys were,
We
if
did
like
2
Pete and I were
laps
pretty
each.
close, yep, at night. And that would give us an extra, we'd have extra time to sleep in a row.
Good amount of sleep, yeah.
Yeah. And then we could then wake up earlier and do it. And then you guys could sleep.
Yeah, because that would be 5 hours of sleep for each of you, right?
Yeah. Plus the extra like.
Subtract a half hour on each end probably, but yeah.
And maybe a little bit extra because you don't have to start like.
yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Good
So
point.
that'd be a lot better though than having to have the less time. You know
So
what I
we're
mean?
planning on doing just single laps until we get to nighttime, and then the plan that you're proposing here is that we then do 2 laps. I guess
Not in a row, but yeah, but
I would do 2 laps. Pete would do 2 laps. You would do 2 laps.
it would really go-
Chad
Or
would
it could
do 2
even
laps.
do-
no, it'd go
You, Pete,
Jonathan,
you, Pete.
Pete, Jonathan,
Yeah,
Pete.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And two, what happens is in the middle of the night, I've done running races like this. At 2 a.m, you don't have to wait 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like you only have to wait an hour, so you're not coming down as far.
Yeah.
yeah.
And
That's a
you don't
good
get
idea.
that sleepy melatonin thing going on.
I think I would want to just do 2 in a row
Well, you could
rather than do
yeah.
like a lap and then wait, because that waiting in between, I'm not sure it would do me much
Yeah,
good.
that's a good point. Is if you guys too are going to be at
Might just
night.
make me tired.
Yeah, if you're the first ones, that'd be good. But then Chad and I, when we wake up, we could go off because we're going to be awake the rest of the day.
Yeah.
So we
thereafter.
could then switch after that. That'd probably be a good strategy.
Yeah. Yeah, lots of ideas.
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll talk about that.
We'll be slower at night too.
yep.
That's something worth pointing out,
For
right?
sure.
I mean, it just happens
Sure.
for plenty of reasons because of limited sight, and you're going to hold back because of night. And I don't know if anybody's ridden at night, listen to this podcast, but like the world comes alive with beasts and scary things whenever you're riding at night, especially once you're tired from racing. For 24 hours, then things get really kind of spooky. So
The other thing you guys talked about was food. And Pete described this delicious, like, let's do some eggs with a little bit of,
Oh, yeah,
or
sounds great.
rice, a little bit of eggs, and
Sounds
some like
great.
crumbled bacon. Okay, if you don't have a Swanee,
we do have a swan.
okay, yeah, but at this time when you guys discussed this,
yeah.
we didn't have one nailed down.
Yeah.
This is a pro tip for everyone else doing 24-hour kind of races like this, running, and I think going to Burning Man 5 times. When you have these elaborate ideas of what you will do for food, and then when you get there and you're so tired, like fresh eggs are hard to make. So you'd have to do it for like each person for an hour.
Or you just make rice cakes, like we said.
That's even hard to do. Like someone's got to do that. Like if it's yourself, what I'm saying as a tip for everyone else, think of as when you're the most tired when you get off work, multiply that like 3 times. Do you want to cook or do you want to just pick something up?
Yeah.
So if you could find, like I said, burrito bowls, go to whatever your favorite burrito place is, get a bowl, get a couple of those that have like different flavor profiles, put them in your fridge if you have a RV, and then just microwave those. It still have rice and beans and probably the meat's okay. Get those as close to start as you can. Get pre-packaged foods like that. Cereal and milk I put down. Chips, even though we probably wouldn't normally eat chips, but when you're exhausted, right, you're going to be so tired.
Yeah.
I put down easy things like hot dogs, even though they sound gross, but after you've eaten all this other stuff, fruit is great,
Yeah.
right? The one thing, if we do have a Swanee,
Which you do.
we do. Has that person
Yeah.
said they were going to come?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So our Swanee, Tori, when she comes, how good will it sound to have like Jimmy Dean sausage and pancakes in the morning? Like cooking it the whole time? Does that sound good?
Doesn't sound good to
You don't want to have pancakes in the morning?
No, oatmeal still sounds good. That,
Okay.
that just sounds like too much to process.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
too much food.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it's too much.
Here's the
For you, maybe not.
Well, you have
can eat a
3
lot.
hours
This has been
between
proven.
laps, maybe 4 hours between laps.
Yeah. You have a good amount of time. Here's the interesting thing with
Yeah, I want
this.
sausage.
I think that the one thing I've learned with these sort of races, you just need variety, because if you have just one thing, you're going to get tired of that one thing. So like having variety is going to be good. I think that we'll have the rice cakes fully handled. My wife will actually, her family lives in Arizona, in the Phoenix area, and she's going to be down there at that time. So and she might come down to the race for a bit. But
she'll make some for us?
Yeah. Which is going to be great.
That's amazing.
So then we'll have those made.
Can I have a request on that?
Yeah, and we can have a bunch of different flavor profiles of those.
Wanted.
So we can have like the blueberry crisp or the eggs and bacon or like plenty of different things.
That's the key, is you want sweet and savory to mix off. Sometimes happens at Burning Man too. You get all savory. You go to Costco and you get chips and all that kind of stuff, or you get chips and Oreos.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that, almost like the junk food. If you get too much junk, you think you're gonna want it, and you do at first, but after a while you hate it.
Tired of
Yeah,
it.
yeah, it gets bad. So yeah, that's and on top of that too, like rice cake, as different as the flavor is gonna get, you're gonna get sick of a rice cake period too.
For sure.
You're just gonna want something different. So we're planning on when we come down to go to a grocery store and just ransack the place, so to speak, and kind of fill up with a variety of things. So
we're gonna pretty much have a cook. I think during the nighttime, she can just sleep, and we can have. Like, we don't really need to eat a huge meal. Well, a little bit, but that's maybe too where you can have oatmeal or some fruit or something that's very easy. Maybe it doesn't need to be heated up to wake everyone else up. Like, plan that part out too. But it'd be better. Like, we shouldn't expect our Swanee to be up 24 hours.
Totally.
Like, let's have a good 6-7 hours sleep.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, the last thing I want to talk about.
Yep.
This is just, we talked about cooling vests.
Yeah.
I found that I use the same cooling vest that you did. I forget what it's called. But
I can't remember for the life of me.
The problem with the cooling vest is when it traps in so much sweat that you lose evaporative cooling. And I was thinking that I can see, like in the tour when they do it for warm-ups when they don't have a lot of fans. But when you're indoors and you have fans, I found a cooling vest to be hotter than to not have a cooling vest.
I think it's a great idea for post. You get off the bike, you're
walking around.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. But even sleeping. I mean, when I did the whole Giro thing, we'd come back just completely wound up, and I mean, trying to sleep when your body temperature is elevated like that, just trying to take a post-ride nap was a hard thing to do. But I took wet towels and draped them over me, and it was a crude mechanism, but it worked, and I actually had a pretty sufficient nap. Got up feeling fresh or refreshed, I should say. And it made quite a big difference. But if we're going to come back from an evening lap completely wound up, assuming we go basically full gas the whole time, it's going to be hard to nod off in that first hour or two. 100%. But if we can cool ourselves, that gives us a big jump on that.
And I know that a lot of you might be thinking, like, because if you've seen pictures of 24 hours in the Old Pueblo, it can get very cold there in that
then
spot.
It won't be a problem, yeah.
Even then, though, even when it's cold outside,
true.
You really get your core temperature
inside
up
of an
quite a
RV
lot
with blankets.
Still.
You make a great point, is that lowering your core temperature is a key aspect of like falling asleep. So on this race, I think you're saying is, would you wear the vest before you get in bed, or are you talking about wearing the vest to bed?
No. I'd probably hop off the bike, put the vest on. If it's middle of the day and I'm really hot, I might fall asleep with the thing on. But the idea is just to cool myself down while I eat and then hop into bed.
Helps you sleep way better.
I've done this at home too, is we could just wait outside in our kit until you get really cold, like you actually cool down before going into a warm RV and kind of being sweaty and then going to bed hot. Like it takes a little bit extra time, but it's a lot easier to fall asleep that way.
Showering also is a big help. If you're willing to do that, which I definitely want to. After my lap, I want to shower, and it just helps you feel clean and refreshed, and it can really drop that core temperature quick.
You're bringing up a couple things too. I think one key thing we have to do is get out of our kits as soon as possible after each one, and hopefully shower each one. I don't know how much water we have, but quick like RV showers,
Totally, yeah.
And two, what I'm going to do is take 1 milligram of melatonin before my lap starts, before I have to go to sleep.
It has kind of like a delayed release.
It's like an hour, really.
Got it.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to take 5 because what?
From 1 to 5.
Yeah. So what happens with 5? This is what my sleep doctor told me. Also the title of a Stephen King book.
What my sleep doctor told me.
What happens with 5, like you will go to sleep, but what your body has this rebound effect that after like 4 or 5 hours, you produce, I don't know chemically what happens, but you wake up. And what happened to me is I wake up at like 3 in the morning if I take 5 milligrams.
Yes.
And I'm like wide awake and I'm like,
but you feel terrible.
So you're going to
No, I feel awesome.
that.
So
I feel terrible like 5 hours later.
I still feel the same thing happened to me on our red eye. I took it too early. I didn't take enough. I don't know, but it ended up, I woke up like like 3 hours into our red eye, and it was just like bing, like could not go back to sleep. My body was up.
It might be what my doctor said is too much. So 1 or 1.5, or 1/2 a milligram is just enough to get you asleep. But if you take too much, you'll have that. You'll wake up during one of your circadian, like, I don't know if it's circadian rhythm.
It's a sleep cycle.
Yeah, sleep cycles at night.
I felt like I never actually woke up, but I was stuck awake. It was very, very, very.
But I want that though for this. Okay. So I'm going to take. I forgot about this. 5 milligrams of not time released. Like, it really takes an hour for it to come in. So if we did 2 laps in a row, after one lap, take it.
If Nate does a 1 hour, 15-minute nap, we'll just find him
minutes.
napping on the side of the dirt trail.
There's funny story. There's actually like a study that happened, I think with swimmers somewhere, where they would take melatonin and not go to sleep and train. And it actually improved, I think, performance.
Oh,
of like
crazy.
having. I know. I don't really want to try that because it would mess me up. But someone could Google that study.
Safe to do. They're swimming in water. Totally safe for them.
Yeah, exactly. Just fall asleep. But anyways, that's everything that I have.
Cool.
On that. Now you guys are set straight.
We're on board with your rebuttals, I think.
Okay.
So
awesome.
One thing too that we wanted to talk about caused quite a discussion in the podcast group. Which, if anybody is on the Facebook podcast group, head over to the forum. Plenty of conversation happening there too, and it's just way easier to search. So then you'll be able to find things if you've posted them in the past. It's way easier. So you can head over to the forum and check that out, forum.trainerroad.com. But this is the first time in over 3 years. So I've been training consistently this is the 4th week now. And I have not had 4 weeks of consistent training in the past 3 years because it always gets derailed by injuries before this point is ever reached. Like,
how does that feel?
Oh, I have a huge portion of my life back. Like, it genuinely is. It's life changing. Like, it just feels so good to be able to train again. Like, and as far as like, I'm sure somebody is probably listening to this and struggling with knee injuries and a similar situation. I don't know how to solve your problem. I wish I did, but like the only thing I've come to know is that knee injuries are extremely individual. We'll kind of talk a little bit about something about this in the podcast coming out. But anyways, I took a ramp test and I was at 275, and I did, part of goal setting, I believe, is accountability. So I put out what my goals are. My goal this coming year for 2019.
At 275, what's your watt per kg?
I'm at 4, I think so.
Which is so annoying, everyone. Yeah. Like, he doesn't train, and his baseline is 4 watts per kilo. And I train so much, and 4 watts per kilo is pretty fit. And I think for looking at stats, the vast majority of you, 4 watts per kilo trained is a pretty good goal.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, I think I'm around there. I guess I'll do it right now. And yeah, 4.16.
4.16, that's even more annoying.
There you go, Nate. But anyways, I put that down there. And then like my goal is national championships this year. And that's going to be in Winter Park, Colorado, mountain bike, cross-country Olympic mountain bike national championships. And my goal, I would love to be at 320 watts before that happens for sure.
This year?
Yep, that's the goal.
Chad, think that's doable?
Yeah, totally.
So, and I put that goal there because I've been there before.
Yeah, exactly.
At this weight. So at 141 pounds actually, which is the goal weight.
How many kgs?
Let's figure that out. 141 pounds.
I thought you'd know it off the top of your head.
You'd think, right? 63.9. So just under 64 kilograms. And that would be at 320 watts. And I feel like also at that point, that gets me, hopefully, with the bike skill that I'll have, with repeatability that I will have trained, everything else, and a sound race plan and everything going well, I feel like that could possibly get me into the running for a podium. And I know a lot of people think that sounds crazy because that's 5 watts per kilogram right there if I'm at 320 weighing that. But people are so fast when you get to the top level of like these races, these national championship races. It's not far off from pro fitness.
No, I think it is. It's low level pro.
Yeah.
Like, it is pro fitness.
It's really hard to beat them. So I would love to get to the point where I'm there and I can go through this year, and it's more of like a learning experience for this year. I'd love to be able to match my podium that I got at 4th. That would be awesome to be able to do that.
So top 5 podium.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, mountain bike podium.
Yeah.
I don't know why. It makes me feel silly calling a podium 5 people, but I guess it makes more sense technically.
Yeah, nationals, that's how it goes.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and even podium, right? That implies 5 rather than 3. Anyways, but when you get into the following year, which is my real goal, because I feel like I need 2 years to build.
This is where the controversy starts.
Yeah, I put out my goal was 350 watts at 141 pounds.
It's a moonshot. I mean, that's,
Yep.
yeah.
Exactly.
Which is what watt per kg is that? 5.5?
5.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5.5.
Which is big.
It's way up there.
That would be, Jonathan, if you could, maintain that and keep that for a long time, you could probably be in the Tour as a domestique. You think so, Chad?
Yeah, I think even anything over 5 will get you get you into that bracket. I mean, some of those sprinters are carting a lot of mass around. They don't have 450 watt thresholds on them.
Yeah,
I'd say the sprinters are slower than domestiques. Though.
An important
Well,
thing
okay,
to
if we're talking domestiques, but guys who can actually survive the tour and actually
you could
get
maybe
through.
hang in.
Yeah, an important thing to add is that those athletes have so many other things other than their power to weight ratio that make them a solid candidate for that I would never have, right? So it's like
Ever.
ever.
Just kidding.
It's a very different deal. But that's the stretch goal, and I put this out there, and a lot of people are just completely confounded. They cannot believe that they feel that I've basically I'm biting off more than I can chew with that. But I figure if I've been to 320 before, there's no point in me being okay with just getting to there and calling it good. I might as well have a stretch goal that goes beyond that. And any ground that's gained in between 320 and 350 is just going to be positive.
So this is where I think you can do it. One, your base is 4.1 without training. That's pretty high. We did a VO2 max test with you not that fit. I know
I wasn't fit.
You don't VO2 max gets affected a lot by body fat percentage and a little bit though by fitness, but not a ton. Like your power at VO2 max can raise, but your actual number, I think you were 67 or 69.
I think I was 69.
I bet you would be in the low 70s when you're very, very fit. Like
Right.
you wouldn't ever go up to 80 or something. You've been close to that before, and when you did that, though, I don't think you were the smartest.
Absolutely.
Both in nutrition and in training, you were kind of just a lot of miles guy.
I was starving myself, and I was just putting in way too much time on the bike.
Yep.
And my power, I feel like looking back at it.
And when you talk about way too much time on the bike, you're talking an individual rides, like 7 and 8 hour rides.
Oh, yeah.
Jonathan was Mr. 8 hour
on
ride.
Saturdays, on Saturdays, I was gone for 8 hours, right?
Yeah,
And that was
there's diminishing returns at some point there where you're probably just doing nothing beneficial.
and I was starving myself
On
throughout the
top of
whole
it,
thing,
yeah.
right?
At the same time.
So like any gains that I got there, it's a miracle that I even got any gains. So because I was just not giving myself what my body needed. So I feel like when I was at 320, there was a lot of low hanging fruit. So why not
And
set the goal higher?
you're at 30, right? And the VO2 max really starts to go down at 35.
I'm 31, yeah.
Yeah, 31. So you still have like time. And
Yeah.
at 35 too, it's not a drop off, it's a gradual decline. But you haven't hit the age yet. Like if you were 45, I'd be like, well, just because you were 320 when you were 27 doesn't mean you can
do it
hit
again.
350 now.
Yeah, I wanted a 400 watt threshold when I was 35, but as each year goes by, I recognize that's probably not going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, every year it's a little harder.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's why I think it can happen. And I probably want to have it happen more than anyone else. I want, if you get a national championship, I want you to wear the jersey every day on the podcast for a year. We'll put it up behind too. We'll put like pictures of you, like different like fashion shots wearing it all over the wall.
People would love that, wouldn't they?
Yeah. But the other thing to think about, even though you have really good technical skills and all the things that a mountain biker needs, at 350 and 141, that's still not a guarantee.
It's still not. That's the crazy thing.
So people are so fast.
They really are. And it's like, and especially when you get to elevation, like Winter Park, I don't know if it'll happen for 2 years in the same spot. I think they're changing that trend, but it's going to be there this year. And man, that's like 9,000 feet almost is like this base elevation. So like,
Can Chad and I come to nationals?
Oh, heck yeah.
I don't
I'd love
know.
to have you guys there.
I wonder, we can get in this more later, but you get in the zone, if we should just like hang out and be there and talk to people and let you do your own thing and we'll cheer you on. Because you know what I mean? I don't want to I don't want to
divert his focus with podcasts and that sort of thing.
No, not even that. Just even hanging out.
Oh.
Like you can just do your thing and we'll just see you later.
I get pretty focused.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if you have an emergency, you text us. But other than that, we wouldn't see you until you're on the course.
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. I think it would be great. And if anybody is planning on prepping for nationals, for cross-country mountain bike nationals, or if you're planning on prepping for Masters Road Nationals or Road Nats, whatever else it is, and you have some lofty goals, you should drop us a line. You can do that just Jonathan@TrainerRoad.com and let us know, because it'd be cool to set up something where we can follow along with the progress of other athletes that are doing this sort of thing. National championships, regardless of the nation that you're going for, whether that's the U.S., Canada, I don't care if you're in the Czech Republic, wherever else it is. Let us know, because that's a big goal, and it's pretty cool to see people strive for big goals like that. So
we're going, Chad. You down? It's
Sounds
close,
good.
right?
Yeah.
I want
It's,
to ride there too. Sounds fun.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
We just hang out.
Little side note, that
best.
is
Ride
the
bikes, drink
best. I've ridden Whistler. I've ridden, and Squamish is incredible. It's its own thing. But in terms of bike parks, I've ridden around Utah and Park City and different spots, Mammoth, and nothing comes close, even Whistler, in terms of trail construction to what I saw at Trestles, which is where Winter Park is.
Are there lifts or?
Yeah, there's
Oh,
lifts.
so we can just rent
You can.
big bikes. Let's just not even bring bikes. Rent big bikes. Have fun.
Sounds good to me.
It's like
Yeah.
the trails are so perfect. Like, they don't go straight for a long time and gain a ton of speed, then a tight switchback. Every time a switchback's coming up, the trail starts to meander and it starts to turn a little bit more uphill. So then it naturally slows you down. So then you can just roll through the turns. Like,
Sounds amazing.
oh, it's so good.
That
So,
sounds fun.
This sounds pretty good, Chad.
yeah.
You can.
I'm into
you,
it.
you should like progress me. Have a progression. Like there's training progressions, but I want you to develop me an IPA progression because sometimes you jump me to
Ease you into it.
those double IPAs, and
Tribbles.
I take one sip and it's too
Yeah,
much.
you
thanks.
come in too hot and then
Yeah.
you just stop.
That's like
Yeah.
going right into Abbott, like
Yeah.
for workouts.
I can
but
help you along.
yeah, over like 4 or 5 days, you just like, here, Nate, you should do this,
Sure.
and it can be an
Yeah.
experience. That sounds wonderful.
I will beer
Periodization.
coach you.
Coach Chad, yeah. Then you'd be like, okay, Nate, we need to taper a little bit tonight.
Yeah.
Put you on some
Ship,
ciders.
ship back some pale ales.
Yeah.
All right, this one's from Eric, and it has to do with 24 hours in Old Pueblo. Just 2 of them that we'll rip through pretty quickly and then get into some other questions. We're going to go through rapid fire this week. We've got a lot to cover. Eric says, will you be tracking weight during your 24-hour race in order to make sure you stay hydrated?
No, next question.
Todd says, I love your podcast, even though I'm not a subscriber.
really?
To TrainerRoad. I just moved right on.
In general, sorry. So the question is, stay hydrated during that thing. I think we're probably going to do, I'm going to do scratch the hydration stuff.
Same.
Not the hyperhydration, but the rescue
the
hydration.
exercise.
Rescues.
Yeah.
Whatever
Oh,
their
okay.
version of it is.
It is important to be hydrated in this thing. I'll drink a lot of water, but I'm not going to weigh myself. As everyone usually does, you drink extra, you pee out the excess. But I'll try to focus on salt and a little bit of sugar.
Yeah, and we're actually working with Jeff Copabianco from Breakthrough Performance Coaching, I believe. And he actually has sent us some sweat test kits. So we should actually
I have
have
so many questions.
Yeah.
So many questions.
Long before then, we'll be able to have our sweat rates figured out and that sort of stuff too. So that will all
Maybe.
aid us to the point where we probably won't need to be, weighing ourselves all the time.
We have so much time in between each one that
Totally.
will totally rehydrate as long as you're not being a dummy and drinking those double IPAs between each between Chad's like
Toward the end of the race.
Well, let's have
We'll see.
Jonathan. I have
Possibility.
this feeling like we look at the lap times. We're like, it's faster if Jonathan just does all of them.
You guys, you're building me so many exit strategies that lend to doing 1, maybe 2 laps and then just kind of kicking back.
It's pretty great.
One lap, and then Jonathan does all of your laps.
Oh, gosh.
We can look at the time and be like, seriously, he might beat us by 5-10 minutes on a lap. And his
Yeah.
slow lap might be only 5-3 minutes, but
I
still,
really
just
hope
comes down
that's
to the
not the
math.
case.
we can cheer him on.
I hope that's not the case. Next one's from Todd. He says, love your podcast, even though I'm not a subscriber to TrainerRoad yet, he says. Listen to your latest episode, and hopefully that yet means he's going to change it soon.
Yeah.
He says, I listened to your latest episode when you talked about the 24 hours in Old Pueblo, and I have a question on tapering for a 24-hour event as a solo rider. I'm racing my first solo 24-hour event next month in SoCal, and I can't find much advice that I would tend to trust as much as if it was coming from you guys. I understand that. You come across a whole lot of crazy dogma,
Yeah.
And then he says, I'm 48, pretty seasoned, and have been endurance racing for more than 20 years. I'm 6'4" and 205 pounds, though, so I'll be lugging my, as he says, my giant carcass around the course and really want to show up primed. Thanks in advance for any pearls you send my way, and enjoy Kona. So with this one, tapering for a 24-hour event, man, I really feel like you don't really get anything by throwing in any additional stress that final week.
Yeah,
That's for
no.
sure.
I mean, all your training is going to be, or all the benefit you're going to get from your training is going to be realized or in the system, so to speak, a couple weeks out, and then it's just a matter of ditching the fatigue and becoming fresh. And for something that's relatively long and slow like this, I mean, very long, but it's going to be done at a slow pace. I mean, you got to ride for 24 hours. You're not going to be hitting it real hard. You don't have to come into it particularly fresh. I mean, tapering becomes really important as the events become shorter and more intense. So something like this, I mean, you could, if you're not carrying a ton of fatigue into that final week, you could just duck out of the last couple of days of training and show up on race day and probably have just as good an event as if you took like a very serious 2-week taper approach.
There's no need for openers for this kind of thing too, because openers are more of like, so you can get anaerobic
Prime
quicker
the
and
system,
stuff.
get the
Start really
painkillers
quick
rolling.
and-
Yeah, it's
Which you're not going to do on this. Like, don't There's really no need to start.
No. The only reason I would even prescribe anything more than a couple days of taper, or maybe like a full week's taper, is if he's dragging a lot of fatigue into this. He knows coming into that last week of training, I am smashed, and I have 1 week prior to my event. Yeah. Then I would take the taper. I would extend it out a few more days for sure. But unless that's the case, I wouldn't worry about it. A couple days prior, and let it roll.
I don't want to have that feeling of there's probably me travel involved here too, but that feeling of really fresh legs, and really like a couple days before, feeling like I really want to train today. But not. And then those couple days afterwards, then I feel like I have a really good race.
I've heard coaches describe it, and I agree with them that the sign of an effective taper is that you're eager to race. You feel particularly good. You're ready to do it.
Yeah.
It's really that simple.
I've never done a 24-hour mountain bike race, but I have Everested before. I should tell you guys all about this sometime. Yeah, believe it or not. And that was 24 hours. And we started out, and I looked at the numbers and thought of what we could actually sustain, and it was so low in terms of power output, and I kept governing everybody on that.
Real.
And everyone was like, this is ridiculous. This is way too slow in the beginning, but it ended up toward the end that, some folks couldn't even, that pace was too much at the end of the time. So like when you're going out on this, it's hard with mountain biking because sometimes the terrain just forces you to go hard, but pacing is going to be so key. I know this is less about the taper perhaps, but like even getting yourself in the mental space beforehand, you're not going out there to slam it. You're not going to start super hard. You're not going to, jam it up some hills. You really want to just be going through and keeping a consistent pace. Because the way that 24-hour races like this work is that, your consistent lap times that's going to be the best help for you.
Where did you land for your percentage of FTP? Like 50, 55, 60
I think that we were trying to hold like 0.55 IF is that was what I was shooting for.
55% of FTP.
So it was low. And especially when you're climbing, it's hard to even hit that, right? Yeah. So we were like in the lowest gear we could and just going slow, but it paid off.
How it relates to the taper is you'll start this race, everyone's going to be running, everyone's going to be going so fast, and you're going to feel amazing, right? Because you're going to have this taper, and you're going to, exactly. Like I haven't done this before, but I'm guessing there'll be a group of 24-hour people that are in the way back who are going very slow.
Yeah.
The other thing, this would be a great race to carbo load. Yeah,
totally.
I've talked about it in the forum and had on previous podcasts. We talk about Ironmans and maybe Leadville being an eating contest. 24-hour race, that is definitely an eating contest.
Totally. Yeah.
Like you got to make sure that your stomach doesn't get upset, but you're also maximizing the amount of food you take in because you cannot keep up.
Yeah, you can't. It's too hard.
And hopefully, though, you're riding at such a low percentage where you're not using much glycogen. But on a mountain bike race, there's probably going to be some times that you're going to have to use glycogen. It's going to get just so steep.
Oh, yeah, he'll be using it.
Like on a road, like you talked about, in the climbs on the road, it's going to be worse on the mountain.
Yeah, even worse.
Yeah, he'll be using it at a trickle rate the entire time for sure.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a light switch thing, right? It's a system of faders, more or less.
It's in play.
Yeah, so, but yeah, and I guess we benefit from the fact of having a team relay. We don't have to talk about riding for the whole 24 hours, right?
You might be riding for 20 hours.
At the moment.
Pete and Chad love to enjoy themselves.
I come back at 2 p.m.
We're hedonists.
It starts at noon on Saturday, and I come back at like 3 p.m. and I see Chad already kicking back some beers and hanging out. And
I'll hang as long as I can, gentlemen.
Oh, boy. Okay, this is from Lewis, and it's not a question, actually. It's just praise. We get, like, the question a lot of the time. People ask, like, does TrainerRoad, like, work for this type of person, that sort of stuff. So we figure we should share these ones when people send these in a little more often. So Lewis says, no question for me, just a massive thank you to everyone at TrainerRoad, even the support staff. I've been trying for at least 4 years to get a certain time on a local hill and have never been able to get under 17 minutes and 10 seconds, which that's like I think we can all relate to that. We all have that marker hill. It says, today I smashed my time by 42 seconds, going 16 minutes and 28 seconds. He says, I honestly put this down to TrainerRoad, and the reason I'm riding in is because for me, ironically, the biggest thing I've learned from TrainerRoad is not how to ride my bike, but how to train, basically work and rest. I always thought ride more and get faster, but no, ride smart and rest well. I've been riding a few years now, and I thought I understood how it worked, but how wrong I was. Moral of the story is rest as well as you train and trust TrainerRoad even if you don't feel like tapering. He says the winky face. It really is down to you and everything you all do for us. Thanks again, Lewis. Awesome.
Great job, Lewis.
Thanks, Lewis.
You're very welcome, Lewis.
That's some sound advice right there. It's like
It is that simple.
the low-hanging fruit, right? Is like a recovery.
It sounds simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is simple.
It is simple.
Yep.
But the complexity of training and resting relative to your training, it's pretty complex.
That's where you fit it into life. That's where things get complex.
There's a lot of complexities.
You know. Okay, so from Alex, he says, hello, Chad, Jonathan, and Nate. First of all, I'd like to thank you and all the good folks at TrainerRoad for your products and quality content. Simply put, you guys are amazing. 5 stars without a doubt. Nice.
Yes, we haven't asked for 5-star reviews lately. I think we're almost at 1,000.
Yeah, we're over that, I think.
Oh, cool.
Yep. Yeah, you can
Good
do
job,
so.
everyone.
You can do so in iTunes or on Google Play.
No, here's what we're doing now. Okay, everybody.
Yeah.
Go to the App Store for TrainerRoad and go to the Google Play Store and give us, I mean, if you think we deserve 5 stars,
Yeah.
give us 5 stars there. If you don't think we deserve 5 stars, email support@trainerroad.com and tell us what we can do.
Yeah,
But
for sure.
our podcast has 1,000 5 stars. Our app doesn't. Like, it's hard to review apps and
Yeah.
but please go review us in the App Store. If you do it right now, you're listening on your phone, just pop it open and do it. That actually helps us grow and we can do more features and it makes us look more
Reputable.
reputable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Legit.
He says, I was a TrainerRoad user for a few months 2 years ago until I gave up cycling to focus on my new job abroad. I'm now back at home and ready to start all over again, but my fitness dropped significantly due to 26 months of desk work and minimal physical activity. I used to be a road and mountain biker and he says mountain bike racer, I should say, so slightly different there, with an FTP of 340 to 350 watts, and I was at 4.6 watts per kilogram, so that's 74 kilograms. He says he's 188 centimeters.
That is legit.
He's a fast rider. He
Or
says,
was.
yeah. And he says, I'm afraid of how much work it's going to be or that there is in front of me to get back into shape. My last FTP test showed 240 watts at 83 kilograms. And so he says, do you have any tips on the mental and physical side of things to help me get back to where I was or closer? I will, of course, subscribe to TrainerRoad and use the training plans you would suggest. Additional info, he says, I'm 26 years old, have 12 to 15 hours per week to dedicate to training, and will focus mainly on road racing in 2019. So he has a lot of time to train.
A lot of time.
He's at 2.9 watts per kilo now.
He was at 4.6.
Yep.
That happens when you don't train for a while, right?
To mortals, yes, Jonathan. But you're
Yeah.
at 4.1
You
without
dropped,
training.
But you dropped to how much?
Oh, I'm at like 2 watts per kilo.
You were at 2.
I think when I don't train, I go down to like 2 watts per kilo.
And now you're 4.
No, I think today I'm at like 3.8 or something,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. But I will be above 4.
Yeah.
4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, nice.
After my next ramp test, I'll hopefully be at 4.
The point is, it's very possible for you to recover a whole lot of fitness.
Well, the biggest thing is if you've been there before, Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's much, 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 much easier to get to where you were before
Seems to be.
than to push to new limits.
Mm-hmm. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed is consistency. Right? Like that's like the yeah. I mean
That's
the
my
tough
first
part.
recommendation for anybody who's either new to training or returning to training after a long layoff is first lay that framework. So I'm verging into running after a long hiatus from that, and all I want to do is establish consistency. I'm just looking for 30-minute runs 5 days a week, and I'm working up to that over time. And that's just as an example. I don't care what those 30 minutes are comprised of. They're going to be, in my case, low intensity because I'm just trying to build durability and avoid injury. But the same idea applies across the board, regardless of which discipline or which sport. Is it's first get yourself out there however many times a week. Get on your trainer however many times a week. Once that's there, then you can start worrying about all the nuts and bolts, all the details. But if you don't have that consistency, you're putting the cart before the horse. I mean, you're starting to worry about things that you really don't have any business worrying about. And that's not to say you don't structure those workouts in the early stages, but if you can't even get yourself on the bike 3 times a week, why are you worrying about the composition of the workouts? So first get the framework in place and then move forward from there.
You see so many people, they get even worse. They can't do that, and then they're worried about which carbon fiber part to get. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
That's all of
is
us.
it worth this 10 grams for
Silly stuff.
$150?
Yeah.
Or should my VO2 max repeats be 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes? Should they be at 118% or 121%? I mean, all these things.
And you can't train 3 times a week.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
What
Yeah.
tire-
Or you try, you think I'm going to do 3 times a week. You get on the bike 3 times a week. You beat yourself up all 3 of those times a week. Come the start of week 3, you have no desire to get on the bike again. So you dove in, a little too headlong and just
Jonathan,
back it off a bit.
How much? I'm just starting to get back into, after like October is hard for me to train, training momentum. How motivational is it when you can string 1 or 2 or 3 weeks
crucial.
together
Oh, it feels so good.
without any like?
It's crucial. If you have a long-term plan and you can't establish momentum in the beginning, and this is basically what I'm talking about is incrementally lifting that level of momentum.
Yeah.
But if you can't establish it early on, I mean, you're kind of doomed from the start.
I was sending like overly enthusiastic text messages to my friends while I was training because I was so excited about it, right? Earlier this week. Like it just feels so good.
Yeah.
But it's a really important thing that I like how you call it framework. It's very different than groundwork. It's more like a scheduling thing.
Yeah, I'm not even talking about like base conditioning or anything more specific than framework. I'm on the bike this day, and this day at this time, and this time for this long, and this long.
Yeah, if you don't give yourself at least that, then it's going to be really tough to gain that momentum that you need to gain. Because life, you've gotten used to over the past 26 months, I believe you said, you've gotten used to.
You have a whole different lifestyle.
Exactly
pattern
right.
of daily events.
Yeah.
So it's really, you do have to change your lifestyle around it.
There's this other part too where this happened yesterday to me. Life happened, and I wanted to do an hour recovery ride, but I only did 30 minutes. And that happens to a lot of people that, like, I had a 90 workout minute scheduled. I can't do 90 today, so I'll just skip it.
Yeah. No.
Well, why don't you go down to the 45-minute version or even the 30-minute version, Chad, right?
Maintain that consistency, yeah.
It's like this this habit that you form.
Yep.
And even if you don't get the same training benefit, the habit is better.
Yes.
And I think there is still fitness benefit of doing a 45-minute session
Absolutely.
than a 90-minute one.
Yeah, turn it into a recovery session. And even that recovery session, as we'll talk about in a little while, has many benefits.
Yeah.
I think another aspect of this is having a goal.
Huge.
Yeah, like we've just talked about this, how 24 hours in the Old Pueblo is close enough. Like if it was just nationals for me, I can do that.
Well, there's two goals.
It's a long way out.
Watt per kilo goal, but also an event.
Yeah, I like having some sort of a performance benchmark day.
Yeah, you got to have something to strive toward.
Yep. If that's like, maybe it's just you say that by July, I want to set a certain time up a certain climb. Maybe that's just you want to go on that, vacation that you'll have with your friends and you want to ride and you want to be fit.
It can be a body composition goal. I mean,
Totally.
It could be, I want to get down to such and such percentage of body fat. I want to raise my lean mass to this. I mean, it doesn't have to be an event.
Yep.
Yeah, I like the event because it's a hard date that I can't change.
Yes.
Because it's easy to say, I want to do such and such by January 1st. And then you're like, well, it was a hard December, so let's do February 1st.
But so if it's not an event, then you have to make those two things measurable. You have to set a date, and you have to, of course, measure along the way.
And you can tell people. That's another, telling, having your goal be public can, for some people, it depends on motivations, but for some people, it can make them be more likely to follow it. Some people, it's actually less. It's better if it's internal.
It's about accountability, but absolutely. It does affect different people different ways. Some people put that goal out there so that they can have that support and be on the line or be held responsible for it, accountable, and others it just dissuades them.
Yeah. And I feel like that's super helpful for me. If I didn't have a goal, then I wouldn't have 3 weeks, or I wouldn't have the consistency that I've had for the past 3 to 4 weeks, for sure.
Probably why I haven't gotten on the bike yet.
We talked about it too, is you have multiple goals over multiple years.
Yep.
So if you just had 2 years from now, nationals, the motivation would probably be different than in February, I'm going to go 24 hours in Old Pueblo, and then you're going to have some other races between.
And then I have Sea Otter, or I have the Soldier Hollow Pro XCT. That's another B race that I have. And then I have another B race that's going to be Sea Otter. And then I have another B race, which is going to be the 35-mile version of Carson City Off-Road, not going to do the 50. And then thereafter, my A race is going to be nationals.
Yeah, right? So you're playing a much longer game than, for instance, I am. You're looking at something that's almost 2 full years out. I'm looking at something that I can drum up fitness 2 months out.
Yep.
I'm not going to be fast like you'll be, but I'll be able to carry them on.
The other thing I see people do, and I think this is a legit, maybe not advised strategy, but you sign up for something that is way above your current capabilities. People do this, they sign up for an Ironman. And you go from I can't run a 5K, but I'm going to do an Ironman. And
goals have to be realistic.
But they do it a year ahead of time, and there gets this fear. It's you're motivated by fear, I'm going to die. And then they can do it, and they either quit or they do it. But I think that the people doing running, they sign up for a marathon when they can only do a 5K. And it's another kind of stretch goal. There's the distance goal, and then there's the time goal. And I think for beginner riders and for beginner people, just being able to ride 100 miles is a pretty that's a more tangible goal than to say I want to be at 4 watts per kilo to them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then they can tell their friends, I rode 100 miles. I did an Ironman.
Yeah, and I have no problem with goals being lofty. I mean, they have to be achievable, even if over a long term it's going to require a high level of dedication. And you're like, it's not terribly realistic, but I'm pretty sure I can do that. I love that idea, and I think that 350 watt goal that Jonathan's shooting for is totally along those lines. If he falls short, so what? What if he reaches 330 or 335? I mean, that's a win.
If he doesn't reach it, I'm gonna ask him every day, what's your FTP? Just kidding.
Right.
So I guess the one point that I really wanted to hit home on that I think is really important is, like you said, Nate, something is better than nothing. If you can't get in that scheduled workout, make sure you do that, because what you really need to do is build confidence in yourself as well as you're coming back into this, that you can indeed get back to this lifestyle and you can do it. Once you do that, I guess one thing especially that I've noticed is just when you're coming back, instead of worrying about, instead of putting so much pressure on yourself to just like jam it and hit those numbers that you need to hit or go too hard, really pay attention to the simple things that make you the efficient and, I guess, healthy rider that you need to be. So, biomechanical efficiency. If you start off with one of the base plans, you'll have plenty of workouts that have workout text and TrainerRoad that will be walking you through that. Whether it's pedaling drills, simple stuff just to keep you on track to make sure that things are functioning.
It's similar to swimming in that respect, that if you hop in the pool and you start practicing bad habits from the start, they're only going to magnify. And it's going to be that much more difficult to reshape those habits later on. So if you can, from the start, pedal your bike well, then again, another win.
So what are some things people should look out for?
Yeah, I mean, well, one thing that I just think of with this, like, first of all, is if he's been sitting at his desk and just doing that for that long, then chances are he's probably lost some mobility, I would assume.
Perhaps, or at least flexibility. He might, we've talked about how being behind a car, sitting at a desk, being in that seated position, that hip flex position actually kind of works on a bike rider, but that doesn't mean you want to perpetuate any of those imbalances that are already in place. So just because it doesn't bother you from the start, you may still consider improving your postural muscles, even if on the bike it's not that big a concern. It is a concern in other aspects of living.
So good amount of core work, and you can check that out by going to youtube.com/TrainerRoad. Sweet plug. For 5 exercises that you do that you recommend just can help a cyclist.
Yeah, sure, for flexibility. And then strength too. And I'm a big, if you've listened to the podcast, well, no, I'm a big proponent of strength training regardless of the type of athlete you are. But in this case, especially if you're coming from a period of dormancy, I think strength work from the start is the right way to go. I mean, build that strong body so that you can ride that bike well, so that you can position yourself well on the saddle, that you can apply force without, having all these different losses along the chain, that sort of thing.
And I think what you were getting to, Nate, is like a lot of people just don't know, number one, if they're bound for some sort of overuse injury because of an imbalance, or if they, until what point do I do core work, that sort of stuff. Yeah. Like what signs they should look for.
Yeah, exactly. What signs should I look for on the bike that maybe something's wrong?
Yeah, a couple easy gets are knee movement. So really boils down to a lack of hip control. And that's an easy get. And just watch your knees. I mean, are they ducking in toward the top tube at the top of every pedal stroke? Are they wavering? Period.
So in and out knee movement.
Yeah, lateral movement, side to side. Yep, exactly.
I actually told one of my PTs at one point that I felt like my hips were totally out of control, and he looked at me very weird. And then I think he was thinking like the Shakira side of things.
You just can't help walking around the office.
Exactly.
Just like they're going crazy.
Right. Yeah. But they totally were on the bike, and I feel like that contributed a lot to things that, and basically it was try as I might, and it's really frustrating. Like try as you might to stabilize things and to make certain muscles work, I simply couldn't because I had gotten so out of the habit.
All that stabilization comes from the hips and the inner and outer thigh. I mean, not necessarily the muscles you think are responsible for dictating the knee's path.
So if your knees are slicing out, what should you do?
Again, address the hips. So typically it's a matter of external rotation in the hips, and then a lot of the time the adductors are particularly overstressed or overutilized. ITs can be tight. I mean, there's a lot of things that could cause issues, but some simple exercises for just strengthening the muscles in the outer hip are just anything that moves the leg laterally. So like side laying leg raises, clamshells, sidestepping with a band or some form of resistance around your legs, even attaching a cable to your leg and externally rotating and then moving the leg away from your midline, sort of thing. I'm
going to put some photos up into the forum on this episode post. I'll have producer Ian take some photos while I do some of these movements that I've been doing to help with that.
Yeah, he's got some PT specific ones that are super specific to his issue, but also general to what we're lacking as people who move in a very particular plane and involve very specific muscles.
Yeah, and some really helpful ones like ways to on the lateral movement with your legs like that. There are ways that you can do it with bands in the same exact spot without having to do have a bunch of lateral space to be able to do side steps. So I'll put in some different things that I've done there that have helped, because I think a lot of people, you talk about dormant glutes and the stability issues, and your glutes
are a big hip stabilizer.
That's exactly right. Like they aren't necessarily they aren't the muscles that are really pushing the pedals over.
No, they're big, strong muscles, and they're capable of doing quite a lot of work. But when we pedal a bike, they're not all that active in the propulsion sense.
Yeah, exactly. And when those become inactive, a lot of the time our quadriceps end up going, "Oh, don't worry, I can take the work." You know what I mean? And they get a little over eager there, and they might start pulling on things differently and cause some issues there. So it's an important way to keep it in check.
Runners too, the same issue because they're always going forward. The opposite sport that I think has the great lateral movement is basketball
or soccer or anything.
Soccer, yeah. So much side to side movement.
Football.
Also,
tennis.
In the gym, at least I've noticed in America, there are two machines that you can do this where you put your legs in and you can go out or in.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You normally see women do them, and it's kind of considered as like a leg like a
vanity exercise.
Exactly,
thing?
but it's not.
It's functional.
Exactly. So if you, sometimes it can be hard to get like the bands and stuff. Some people have bands at home, but if not, you go to a gym and there's those machines, I would put that
it's
into
not nothing.
It's maybe better than nothing, but barely. Yeah,
you don't think it's worth it?
No, from a seated position, I don't think it's a very practical exercise. It's not really the stabilization and the balance that comes with standing and doing these exercises, or even just floating your leg and laying on the ground, laying sideways, is a whole lot different.
Okay.
I mean, it's a little too specific, a little too isolating.
Yeah.
Isolative, is that a word?
I'll throw in a link to the bands that I got off of Amazon. They're super cheap too, which is nice, and you can travel with them.
Get.
Like $4, right?
Oh yeah,
Super cheap.
yeah, and you can travel with them, and it comes with a
really
whole selection.
Thin ones that you can wrap up. I mean, they take up no space, so there's some pretty easily attainable tools, cheap ones.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and I guess
and then rocking hips. We talked about this
thing
too. That people think when they rock their hips, it's simply a matter of their saddle being too high and they're having to reach the feet. But often enough, it can be a manifestation of a muscular imbalance. So maybe you have tight hamstrings just on the left side. So every time your left leg drops, you rock because that leg is reaching, or it just simply doesn't have the same level of flexibility. That single issue can manifest entirely across your body, can carry all the way up. It basically just zigzag across the body and affects everything along the way. So little gets like that, the earlier you catch them and the earlier you can correct them and train those proper movement patterns and limit those inflexibilities, the better.
So how do you know, and like if it's not a saddle fit issue, how do you know like how to fix these things?
See a PT. I mean, these are things that we can say. I mean, we can give advice on what to do beyond the diagnosis, but the diagnosis itself needs to be done by people who are far more qualified than us.
Yeah. I think that's the best advice there.
And
Any photos?
Sports PT, rather, because there's different types of
Ideally,
PTs, right?
if you have access to one,
Yeah, one that has experience working with cyclists is the
Endurance
best, obviously.
athletes,
because I remember I went to one PT and I was telling him that my knee hurt, and he worked with football players a lot at the college here, and I told him that when he's giving me problems, I was like, do you think I should hold off on the bike? He's like, no, man, I prescribe bike workouts for all of my guys that are coming back from knee surgery. But the problem was
low impact, no
I had done too much of that, right? And that's where a lot of the pain was going. So even though he thought it was low impact, it wasn't what I should be doing.
Yeah.
So it's really important to get the right one. And any exercises or anything else that we're putting up there, keep a massive grain of salt handy. They're ones that have worked for me, and they're alternatives to do things that can be a little bit easier, maybe if you're traveling or limited on space, that sort of stuff.
I'm going to say something controversial.
Ooh, okay.
Growing up, and I think with my, I'll just say growing up too, not all doctors and physicians are created equal. Got a scary story, but my wife would be paralyzed if we listened to one doctor rather than another doctor. You hear stories like that all the time. So if you don't like how you're being treated, that doctor is not like God.
It's not the be-all, end-all resource.
Get a second opinion. Yep. Yeah. And
they're woefully educated on certain matters. I mean, and it's no fault of their own. And then they get thrust into a lifestyle or a job that's so demanding that furthering their education becomes a really difficult thing to do.
It's just like anything. There are very, very smart great doctors for some things and great doctors for another thing. That's kind of what your point is. And even in in an area of specialty, not all doctors are exactly the same.
Sure.
So just don't think that this one doctor did this. And there's probably some people maybe cringing at this, but you doctors, like you look at your colleagues, you're not all equal. Like there are better ones. It's just like anything. Coaching, not all coaches are created equal.
Yeah.
Doctor, there's a whole bunch more stuff to go through, but like on average, it's much, much better. The quality, but just same with PTs. That's my point is for PTs and for sicknesses, like if you don't like it, why not get a second opinion?
Get a third, yeah.
It costs some money, and if they're all saying the same thing, that's probably what it is, but oftentimes you could get different stuff.
Totally. I think the last thing that I would add to this one is just make sure that you're comfortable pedaling at different cadences, like a whole wide range. There will be cadence drills in the workouts that you do.
That's an easy get to approach or to address early on.
And I feel like it's just going to be helpful because you'll find yourself out on the road eventually or on the trail, and you'll find yourself having to pedal at 40 RPM or having to pedal at 120. You just want to make sure that you're familiar with it all.
Alex, so you should look forward to this because when you come back from a big time off like this, the gains are so quick that you feel like it's super motivating.
It's beginner gains all over again.
Yeah, exactly.
Young too, what, 26?
Yeah, you're going to come through these, like every ramp test you do, you're going to come up so much. And even in the middle of a plan, especially that first plan, you might want to start like bumping up your FTP or increasing intensity because you're going to recover so quickly and come up so fast.
Probably.
As long as you don't overdo it. And then also, Chad, like people shouldn't experience any pain when they're cycling, right? Like
there's really never a good excuse for that. I mean, maybe at the end of a ride or something, you got some low back pain or something. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about anything that's acute or noticeable.
Like you jump on the bike and your knee starts hurting.
Yeah.
You don't want to just push through it.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yep. Joe's question. He says, "Hey guys, I've been following your plans for a few years now. Love your podcast and 5 stars anytime." Nice. My main discipline is cross-country marathon mountain biking. And for those that don't know, marathon mountain biking is usually cross-country mountain bike races that are 3 hours or longer. In most cases, the profiles tend to be less stochastic, and more consistent climbs. But that's certainly not the way across the board. Even nationals this year, I think, was in the southeast of the U.S. It was just like constant rollers. But usually it's over 3 hours. He says, I've noticed my biggest limiter is slow speed pedaling while seated. I'm not able to produce much power at very steep climbs compared to others at my level, and when I do, I feel I pay for such efforts later in the race. I'm more comfortable spinning faster with lower force on the pedals. To partially remove this limiter, I've changed my gearing to better suit my needs, and it helped me a lot. That was our advice number 1, so good job there.
Check.
He says, however, I would like to work on this limiter further. What sessions or changes to particular workouts would you recommend? He says, most of the TrainerRoad intervals, especially the VO2 ones that I do, recommend higher cadence, over 100 if feasible. Is it okay if I lower the target cadence to 60 or 70 to make my training more specific, or would that completely change the nature of such workouts? It's all right, Chad? Within reason?
Yeah, why not? I mean, you can. I don't know that you're going to get through an entire workout of 3-minute VO2 repeats at 60 RPM. It's going to take a much different muscular toll. So I would recommend, if anything, sprinkle those in every once in a while. Maybe try the shorter intervals off and on. So do an interval, skip an interval sort of thing. Just kind of sprinkle it in. Don't be so liberal early on, and see how that goes. It can be pretty hard for athletes who don't have a heck of a lot of just raw strength to turn out high watts at those low cadences. Whether or not you're one of those athletes, I don't know. This is a way to address it. You don't have to get extreme with it either. You don't have to get down to 60 RPM. Try it at 80, see how it goes. Try it at 90, see how it goes.
Can I share a marginal gain pro tip that I've done with VO2 intervals like that?
No.
Moving on. For mountain biking specifically, remember that even though you fixate on this one moment where you feel like your cadence gets drugged down, afterward, there's still a lot of racing left after that short moment. Yeah. And what I've done in 3-minute VO2 intervals is I do the first VO2 interval at quick cadence, or the first minute. The second minute, I do at a slow cadence. And then the last minute, I fight to have a fast cadence. And it's really hard. You have to change gearing if you're not on a smart trainer.
I like that.
But that's exactly what I'm talking about.
But it's really good because after you climb, if you can keep that power consistent, but just, the legs start spinning quicker because you're shifting gears.
I really like
that's
that.
an awesome drill.
So
and also mentally breaks it up, makes 3 minutes feel And in some cases a little shorter, sometimes a little harder.
So you're simulating, it's a steep hill, and you start with momentum, and you have that high cadence. And then as you start to slow down, you're downshifting, and you get to like kind of like drug down into the really low
hit
cadence.
that dreaded shift attempt where nothing happens, just a click.
And then at the end, you're at the top of the hill, and normally this is where everyone slows down. But this is where you're going to start passing people and get ahead of them on the descent. And you're going to pedal fast again, but at that same power level.
Yeah, that's it.
I love that.
It's a pretty race-specific drill, and like you said, it's just a fun way to break up, or not a fun way, but a more engaging way to break up what can be a pretty monotonous 3 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Crazy how long 3 minutes can feel.
Impossible.
Right?
Impossible to
Oh
explain.
my gosh, yeah. I when I was coming back into things and I was in Hawaii on vacation, got out early and I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do 5 3-minute intervals at 120%.
That is a killer workout.
It would have been really hard, right?
And I don't know that you're going to be working that hard on a course ever. Is it realistic for you to have to push 60 RPM at 120? More likely you're going to be working at 90, 95%. So those are the workouts. You ask for specific workouts, and workouts that are in line with that are Newcomb, Peavine, or Newcomb, Peavine, and Haeckel especially, because Haeckel will do the 95, 100, 105. Those are more realistic power outputs for having to mash a gear that slowly. So I would start with something like that.
Could you also like in sweet spot? Just
absolutely. There's no reason that with any workout, especially sub-threshold work, that you can't just dial it down a bit in terms of leg speed.
Now the biggest point on this,
you had a Hawaii. I think did you finish your Hawaii point?
Oh, you did. I was just gonna say, like, I did 5 3-minute. I set out to do 5 3 minutes, and after 3 of those, I was like, 3's enough, and I'm going to take a break until the next set. It's hard, man. 3 minutes can be extremely hard, especially if you're coming back into things after not doing much. But here's like a big point on this. So I, too, in this case, Joe, found myself at Benelli Park in California where they have Pro XCT and where they're actually going to have the Olympics mountain bike race when the Olympics go to L.A. I think producer Ian perhaps is written there. I'm not sure. But it's got constant short, steep little climbs, and this race would always happen in like January and February. So it's not exactly when you've specialized your race fitness yet, at least for us. But then SoCal guys have been like base training since August, and they're already ready to go, right?
Sure.
So, man, I found myself just getting dropped on the climbs, and I thought, you know what? I'm just not good at steep stuff. But the fact is, I just wasn't fit enough. Like, and this is something that's tough. We always get people writing in telling us that like they get dropped on the climbs and they're a bad climber. But the fact is, your power to weight ratio just isn't where it needs to be.
Probably not great.
It's physics.
Yeah, it's physics, right? And I noticed that when I was on these climbs, number one, I didn't have low enough gearing. I changed that, but it still didn't fix my problem. Maybe it made it so that I didn't have to pedal at 40 RPM and I could pedal at 60 RPM, but it didn't fix my problem by making me any faster.
Fitness to hang in there.
Exactly right. So it's really easy to find yourself to say, oh, well, it must be low cadence or it must be something else, but it's misattribution. And that's a really hard thing as a cyclist. And you're trying to find limiters. It's very easy to identify the wrong thing as a limiter. And the one thing I can say, and I'm sure, Joe, you this makes sense to you too, if your threshold was higher, then those efforts would be at a lower percentage relative to your threshold and therefore more manageable.
If those 600, so what you're saying is, I'm just so bad at 60 watt or 60 RPM pedaling.
Yeah.
But really, if you looked at the power meter, maybe those 60 watts the 60 RPMs would be at 400 watts.
Right.
And really what you're bad at is holding 400 watts for minutes at a time.
Exactly.
Like that's really hard to do.
Yeah.
And you think that it's the cadence, but really it's the fitness.
Yes.
And I'd argue too that, especially with mountain bikers on your course, so many mountain bikers think they need that high end gearing, especially
36
with Olympic.
Nino runs a 38.
I would argue that most people don't need a 3210. You're probably that gear's probably pretty clean.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that, a lot of times you're if you're going that fast, you could probably just stop pedaling and you're descending and just rest or put the dropper post on and tuck. And you might need a 30 or a 28.
Yeah.
And that would make
front ring. What are you talking about?
Yeah, the front ring.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, front ring.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's so Leadville. This was so many people telling me like I would go lower than a 32, and I was thinking sub 9. I think you'd be a 30, sub 10, 28, and like sub 12, like a 26.
The option of spinning.
Yeah. And only if you're going sub 8, go like 32, and sub 7 go
because it's a gear you can actually get on top.
Exactly.
On top of, and if you can't.
What's the point of having it?
Seriously, you're just gonna waste yourself muscularly.
I like to see after a race how much like percentage of time people spend in 50 on Eagle versus 10. And I bet you most racers never touch 10
Yeah,
the
yeah.
entire race of a mountain bike race.
It'd be fun
especially
to
like a
have
marathon
data.
race.
Yeah.
It'd be fun to have data on gear selection if we could track that
Totally.
the entire time, get it fed to the Garmin so that we could look at it if we wanted to.
We should with ETAP Eagle, because ETAP does send that over.
Oh,
Yep.
So ETAP Eagle, we should
Rad.
get that. But that would be a great case for choosing
it's
gears.
just something that's interesting to look at. It might not influence your training. It might not even influence your equipment choices.
It should.
But it
It
should,
could.
yes.
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
still interesting to observe. Just check it out.
Totally. And another example of this, to throw myself under the bus, remember when I was talking about how hard single track 6 was because it was so darn steep, and it was frustrating how steep they made all the climbs there? Well, yeah, that's because it just pushed me out of the realm of my fitness capabilities. That's why.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Oh, man. Bad way.
I went to Eagle, and I went to a smaller chain ring halfway through that race, and I was still with the same people getting dropped by the same folks. But it, maybe my cadence wasn't as low, but it was still just my
Fitness
performance
limitation.
potential was what it was.
Yeah.
Two, I want to say about Nino running that big front chain ring is he doesn't do it for the 10. He does it to get a better chain line. He knows
exactly.
He's so down to marginal gains, and he's the best in the world that he wants to have that straight chain line for most of the racing that he's doing, and he knows he's only doing these 2-hour races, and he can power up that short stuff. He's probably never in 50 or not for long.
Yeah.
He wants to be in the middle of that rear cog set.
Yeah.
I'm guessing for people listening here, you most likely need that 50.
You mean I'm not Nino Schurter?
Yeah, you're not Nino.
If only, right?
Any of you non-Ninos.
Do you want to
second part
cover
of
the
the
rest?
question?
Yeah, let's do that. So I guess he says, what would you also recommend any off-bike strength workouts, and what other things would you recommend in general? He says, fortunately, I have no knee problems and never really had any. So doing slow, stompy stuff that he says is no problem
That's
for
cool.
him.
So you can dive right in. Obviously, there's a greater potential for knee injury when you start doing the slow, high-force stuff. So that's a very big concern. You're aware of it already. So kudos to you. As far as off-the-bike strength work, like I just said, big advocate of strength training in general, but especially for stuff like this, and equally or maybe even more so, I want you to be able to put more force to the pedals, and you can improve that via strength training, off the bike strength training, but just as much so to be able to control the delivery of that force. So to have a strong body that's not hemorrhaging power because you're flailing so wildly trying to mash the pedals down. You want good force transfer. You want the strength, the power that's coming out of your legs to make it to the pedal, not to get absorbed elsewhere. And a weak body absorbs it in all other sorts of places, whereas a strong body, you watch Nino Schurter, for instance.
Oh, gosh,
he's like a statue with moving legs.
This is if you compare his style to something like, I think like in the mountain bike world, a guy named Stefan Tempier, right? He's like out of the saddle, carries a really slow cadence all the time. But if you watch, his body is much more like he isn't as solidly planted, I guess, even when he's out of the saddle. He isn't as solidly planted. In other words, it looks like a lot of that energy, he throws in a lot of energy by a lot of upper body movement, but it isn't.
But he's directing it well.
But I feel like he's not maintaining that energy quite as well as Nino does because he's so strong.
Him being a bad example of it.
Yeah, and I feel like I see a lot of amateurs, all of us folks, when we get out of the saddle, there's a whole lot of movement and snaky weirdness, and it's sure you can find a way to make it really efficient, but I think Nino is a great example of that, where he's just so I guess stable on the bike with his upper body.
Yeah, and some movement's still going to take place, and
Sure.
and a lot of that movement is still beneficial. It lends to powering the bike, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who ride sloppily because they're trying to mash a gear that's simply too big for how much power they can create and control.
It's like you're in over your head.
Yeah,
fully.
totally.
I think it was Mike who said it on our previous podcast for Ironman about running. People have the wet noodle run where their whole body is like flexible.
It's awful, and it's just a matter of time before that breaks down.
Yeah, you can look at all the pros, and like their body is rigid, and the power is going through their legs.
Yeah. They pass stress where it needs to go, and they handle that appropriately rather than just letting it end up where it ends up.
The other thing, this is kind of related, is how often, I get this in workout text, but you're in an interval on TrainerRoad, and let's say you're doing X amount of watts, the watts doesn't change, and then some text comes up and goes, hey, relax your upper body, right? Like you're still firm. You're still firm.
Still
You're
strong.
you're strong and you're planted, but you're not tense.
Rigid.
Yeah, rigid.
Not rigid.
And then you do that, and suddenly your heart rate goes down like 4 beats, and the RPE goes
falls.
down.
Yeah. Everything gets just a little more manageable.
It's just like right now, tense your whole upper body, and just try to hold that for like minutes at a time.
It makes everything hard.
It is.
And I would argue.
And people like carry that into the interval, carry it past the end of the interval. You just never really train yourself to let it go.
Yeah.
I'd argue, though, as you're stronger, that you don't do that as much because your body naturally, like a strong core and stuff, your body naturally holds yourself better than when you're weaker and you're just kind of like,
so
and you're stressed out.
I'd argue what happens, and this is especially evident in mountain biking, is that you end up putting so much tension through your hands, wrists, arms, elbows, shoulders, chest, and back that you actually end up disengaging much of your core, and you just end up carrying that stress up there because it feels like your job accomplished. There's a lot of stress. Yeah. Remember when we worked with Lee McCormick when we were in that position, and he was making sure that our core was engaged instead of just our upper body and then our hips, and he was making sure that it was all the way through.
It's a matter of linkage between your hip girdle and your shoulder girdle. If there's loss in there, it manifests in so many unfavorable ways.
Absolutely does. Yep, that's a great way to put it. And one rider that I would point to that does a great example of this on descending is Richie Rude, the Enduro World Series champ. If you watch him, first of all, he's built like a stump of an oak. He's just so broad. But he does a fantastic job of, if you watch him, his core is never the bendy S part that's the variable in the equation. It's he's stable all the way through. And then if you think just in the cycling side of things, if you look at like a bad time trialist on a bike, when the time trials work around in something like the Tour of Utah, and you see a guy that you can tell never rides a TT bike, but then you see somebody like, Rowan Dennis or somebody else.
Tony Martin.
Tony Martin, just stable. They're just so stable all the way through. So.
The other thing I learned from you when I first started mountain biking is my hands would get so tired because I would grip on for life.
Yeah.
And you said, imagine that they're like for toilet paper, they're kind of like cardboard rolls, and you're trying not to crush those. Yeah. Like you don't need, your body will react and squeeze harder if you're going to fall.
When you need it.
And that opened up like a whole bunch of having my whole body relax with the hands. But think about this. How often are you jamming on a road climb and you are, you're seated and you're just, I am going to disintegrate the carbon fiber on my handlebars. Yeah. And that is not making you go faster.
It's not.
It's actually making you go slower, I would argue. And there's just more energy to be able to grip that.
It's wasted tension, and you can also end up working against yourself. I'll do climbing drills out of the saddle, or I'll literally just rest my hands on the hood so that I can't pull on the bars. Yep. It's not the safest thing to do. I'd recommend doing it on a trainer, or if you're going to do it outside on a really flat road. But it detrains that pull press sort of maneuver that's not necessary most of the time. Yep. You need to yank on those bars at particular times, sprinting, surging, that sort of thing, steep climbs. But for the most part, that upper body is not a key factor.
That 20-minute climb, you don't need to be destroying the carbon or aluminum, whatever you're using.
Yeah. So, I think that I guess one thing you could do just on the trainer side of things is you could switch things over to resistance mode, so you can control things perhaps a bit more, and you can carry a lower cadence if you need.
I totally do resistance mode, especially for your like drill, because smart trainers, they don't, especially big changes like that, it takes them a while to catch up.
And they can overreact, and it can put you in a spot where, like, when you drop that cadence down, suddenly you'll be riding at 650 watts for a short period of time.
Someone asked me too, they didn't know how to do this. We're going to have it better on the screen in the future, but if you go into devices and you if you tap on or click on whatever your device is, whatever your smart trainer is, there's modes in there. So you go to resistance and then just do whatever level. It's like 1 through 10, depending on the trainer. And then you can come back. And I do a lot of my rides actually like that instead of erg, especially when it's short, because I like to be able to, it engages my mind a little more to be able to look at it. And then I do little like cadence changes. And I can be really, I argue I can be more consistent than erg.
Yes.
Like when you look at it, I can be smoother than that. And I think that's a good skill to have too. Yep. To be like when you're out on the road, to be able to be smooth rider rather than up and down.
It makes you a great companion to ride within a group. That's for sure.
And to figure out how
to call me a great companion. I don't. Not as great as some, but thanks, Jonathan.
Tanner's question. We're gonna get into 2 more today, and then if you're with us on the live stream, stick with us, and we'll answer some of the questions you've submitted. Tanner says, "Hey guys, love the podcast and have been listening for a long time now. Awesome content. I have a question on nutrition, particularly trying to lose weight while managing performance gains. I'm 5'7" and currently about 165 pounds at about 23% body fat according to my SMART scale. So who knows what SMART scale he's on? Chances are at 23%, I don't really know, but 5'7", 165.
Maybe
Usually,
you are, maybe you aren't. As long as that scale's consistent, you can
that's what matters.
track loss.
Exactly right. So he says, so I figure I could drop some weight. I won't be starting back into a training plan until December and January, so this time of year, I like to experiment on my own. I've been in the gym, lifting maximal weight, kind of like you, Chad. Bench PR the other day. Attaboy.
That's
yeah.
right. Not disclose that number.
Sorry.
422?
Yeah.
Something like that.
420 pounds. Way to go. We just started a whole thread in the forum right there at 420 pounds, right? So he says, I've been in the gym lifting maximal weight and complementing this with rides focusing on several reps of 1 to 2 minutes of maximal power output. Basically, everything is strength focused. It sounds like a fun way to kind of train after, a whole season of doing something different.
Why not?
So he says, I want to get stronger during this phase as well as lose weight, but I've heard and read on many occasions that this is hard to achieve. I don't completely understand this. If I'm supposed to eat 2,600 calories a day, but I'm eating 2,200 calories a day, so a 400 calorie deficit, won't my body just get this extra fuel from fat? Meaning that my body is still getting all the fuel it needs and that I should be able to make performance gains still?
Yeah. So this is a little bit of bro science that you get inside of like bodybuilding stuff is you can't gain muscle without a calorie surplus. And as Tanner, at your body fat, and
that's the bro science.
Yep. At your body fat, and I proved this too. I was at similar body fat. Is that you can totally lose fat and gain muscle at the same time. I believe with the DEXA scan, I lost I think it was 10 pounds of fat or 8 pounds of fat and gained 7 pounds of muscle. And that's another good reason why you do DEXA, because the scale wouldn't change much, but that's obviously like a great shift. But it is true, Tanner, that this is where the bro science does get in, as you get stronger and stronger and your body fat gets lower and lower, it is extremely hard to gain muscle without having a caloric surplus. And then there's people who do weight training or bodybuilding have different amounts, and they have, they call it like a clean bulk, where maybe they're 200 calories a day over, and they have the dirty bulk, which is more, and then they call it the dream bulk, and the dream bulk means you eat whatever you want, like that's the Popeye bulk, where you eat whatever you want and your body fat shoots up.
Was that your bulk plan for a while before you started eating clean?
When I was in my lower 20s, I could eat a ton of food. It was kind of like Brandon, who's here. I could eat everything and still be the skinniest person around.
Yeah.
And I could dream bulk. It was really hard for me to gain weight.
Yeah.
Now that I'm 36,
Doesn't happen.
It doesn't. No problem. I could gain 10 pounds
Well,
today.
typically when we talk about this, we're talking about high volume training too. So people who are trying to do a ton of work and they're restricting their calories, such that the two just don't even closely align at all.
That gets really tough.
Yeah, it gets impossible. I mean, you just can't do it. So try to do 20 hours of sweet spot and shave 800 calories off of your daily intake. It's not going to happen. So there are different situations. You're talking about getting strong and shedding some weight, but you're talking about getting strong in like the strength training sense of things. Those two can work really well together.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, especially if you've come into a situation now where you're running that little deficit, and then if you're doing a good amount of activity but not something that's going to wear you down like that, and it's that high intensity stuff, I think a lot of people think that just because it's high intensity that you don't burn any fat across the board, and that's not necessarily the case. Once again, we're talking about a system of faders, not like a intensity goes up, light switch goes off.
And it's the stuff you burn after. The
exactly.
workout,
The excess or the epoch.
Yeah, you keep doing it thereafter. So.
The last thing I want to say is people have asked, I like the Nokia scale because it syncs to my phone, and I've been getting on the Tanita and the Nokia every day. Unfortunately, the Tanita is like 1 point higher than the Nokia.
So you like the Nokia much better.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the Tanita is obviously wrong.
It's better news, yeah.
But so far it's been consistent 1 point each time, and we kind of talked about it. All I want is consistency because I'm using the DEXA as like my real number or body fat calipers, and the scale I'm using as tracking small stuff. But it changes daily based on hydration.
Yeah, totally. You'll see actually in the image, the thumbnail image for this podcast, if you look on blog.trainerroad.com or on YouTube or anything else, you'll see the scale that we had in there. And that's actually the Garmin scale that I've been using, the Index. And I've been using that one, and it checks directly for me straight across the board with my Tanita. So it's actually, I think the most variance I've seen is 0.2%. So it's pretty good. So yeah, there's plenty of different options. Also, in some cases, I've heard of people using these scales and just not having good results with them. So I don't know if it's kind of like optical heart rate, where like for some people, like with Chad and I with pasty skin, optical heart rate works great for us. It's the only perk of being pasty.
fair.
I think it's the low.
Sorry, Chad.
It's the
It's the only perk that we have of being pasty is that heart rate monitors work on our wrist. So.
At the extremes, it can be kind of hard. So when you're like really low body fat, people get weird numbers and like boo-hoo, sorry for you.
It's still like one of my favorite stories is Keegan was all excited to get this because he heard about us doing the DEXA scans. Keegan Swenson, so he went and did a bod pod one where like they pressurize a thing and it just threw an error code. That's all it threw with him.
Impossible.
Because he was that skinny, yeah. That's pretty crazy. Last one was from Ruse. I assume that's how you pronounce it. If not, I apologize. It says, hey guys, big fan of the podcast and having listened to about 90 so far, and together with my girlfriend, we recently became TrainerRoad users as well. Awesome. I've learned a lot from you guys and really appreciate it. Our pleasure. That's the whole point, is to help y'all. It says, I read nutrient timing last week on holiday after Chad recommended it, and then started Sweet Spot Base mid-volume to kick off my training for next season. One of the first workouts is Taku, that's T-A-K-U, and Chad's notes labor the point about the benefits of recovery and active recovery. Makes sense, as it might be the first recovery ride ever for riders that are new to structured training. Mm-hmm. It's like you thought of it, Chad. It's amazing, huh? He says, it got me thinking, and this is a great point that he makes, is the real benefit of active recovery actually that it makes the muscles insulin sensitive again, giving you another shot at the recovery window, he says in quotes, to get nutrients into them, as discussed in nutrient timing? Does that then suggest that doing nutrition, and he says once again in quotes, properly for recovery rides is actually really important if you want to take full advantage, and that active recovery is about priming your muscles for nutrition-driven recovery as much as possible while trying to limit or prevent further muscle damage? He mentions the temptation is not to bother with specific nutrition because the rides are so easy, but if you do your nutrient timing, taking on carbs and protein during and after, you'll restore glycogen and rebuild muscle faster than if you stayed in an inactive insulin-resistant state, or if you didn't take the opportunity to fuel. So it's an interesting theory. I mean, usually we talk about, it being good to, flush byproduct and that sort of stuff, or just accumulate stress.
A number of the intended benefits. Mm-hmm. I'll just say potentially this could be one of the benefits that you achieve. It depends what you want out of it. Are you looking for an opportunity to further your post-workout nutrition or pre-next workout nutrition? Then yeah, that could be a case for increasing your in the moment insulin sensitivity so that you can uptake more nutrients into the cell and pack in a bit of glycogen and further muscle recovery, et cetera. That's not my intention. And it flies in the face of what a lot of my intentions are with the recovery rides, especially the same-day recovery rides where you're doing a pre-depleted or at some level of muscle depletion, glycogen depletion is still present, and you're getting on, and a lot of the cell signaling and the genetic signaling that we're after with those would be negated or avoided if you took on food at that point. So could work. I don't see why not. If that's what you want, if you want another opportunity to fuel, maybe for whatever reason you feel the next workout is going to require a higher level of repletion, glycogen repletion, then this could be a good way to do it. There is evidence that supports that even low-level exercise does increase insulin sensitivity. So it doesn't mean you have to do a heck of a lot of work to improve your insulin sensitivity. So, yep. But let me talk about what my intended benefits are and what most, I think, coaches' intended benefits of recovery rides or recovery workouts are. One of them is what I just mentioned, the cell adaptation that takes place, and therefore ideally the endurance performance improvement that comes as a consequence of it. And that's all down to that cell signaling, increases in mitochondrial content, so your ability to aerobically metabolize substrate, fat and carbohydrate, increase capillaries, more blood distribution and removal from the actual muscle bed, increase in aerobic enzymes so that you can do more work aerobically, the materials needed to metabolize carbohydrate and fat aerobically you get more of them. And then we don't talk about this very often, but it's a big get with recovery rides is lymph drainage. So the interstitial fluid, all the fluid that's around your cells, it's on a whole different system. It's on a lymph system, and that lymph system isn't driven by heart rate. It's driven by muscle contraction. So you get on the bike, and even at low levels of muscle contraction, you're actually facilitating that lymph removal, and that's an important thing. And you talk about getting bloated and looking puffy and edemic and all that. That's typically excess lymph in the system. That's not going to get out when you kick back and skip these low intensity recovery rides or go for a walk for that matter. And then of course we want to stimulate blood flow for all the obvious reasons. I mean, repair and stuff to the blood or to the muscle and from the muscle. You reduce stress psychologically. Just getting on the bike and going for an easy spin can do wonders for your brain and for your cognition.
I noticed that.
Yeah. Reducing inflammation, and not just in the muscle, but other aspects of the body. And there's a potential for additional fiber recruitment. So if you get on the muscle or you get on the bike when your muscles are in a fatigue state, those more fatigued muscle fibers are less likely to be recruited, whereas other muscles that don't typically contribute to the pedal stroke might get recruited. So now you're increasing the level of neuromuscular innervation to other muscle fibers that are there but don't necessarily get used when you ride your bike. So the cooked fibers get to take a break, and the underutilized fibers get to contribute. And then as far as, losing or, suffering any, he said, prevent further muscle damage, ingest some protein prior to your recovery rides. Yeah. You're not going to get a big insulin response. You're not going to mess with, at least not to the same level, all those cell signaling responses we're trying to get by doing a glycogen depleted. Yeah. So, just take on a bit of, feed your muscles, basically. Take on a bit of protein.
Yeah. I can totally see the paleo guy right now, and he's saying it's because our bodies are supposed to eat after chasing down some sort of an antelope or something like that, and that's how, you know what I mean? Yeah. It makes sense. And if it's something where you feel like you really want to feed, I can see this being helpful if you are doing a recovery ride and the next day you have something pretty big.
Sure.
That's, then you want to make.
It's interesting, actually. I'd never considered it. It's an interesting idea.
How low is a recovery ride? Percent of FTP.
What do I recommend in the recovery rides? It can be a bit subjective, but nothing over 60%. So I like it anywhere from 45 to 55. I mean, I want it to feel easy the whole time. 40s.
So I've been doing 45%, and I really like 45%. And last year with my big increase, I was doing a lot of 45s before my big weekend.
Sure.
I like 45 for an hour. And I also feel that it's a good fat burner. Because it's so low, and based on that, those gas exchange tests,
we saw
it's so low that it's like almost completely fat.
Very little demand for glucose when you're working that easily.
So I haven't told you guys this yet, but I've decided to burn myself out on high volume, sweet spot base high volume again. So I'm 1 week in.
Great choices.
I've tried this 3 times before, and every time I failed.
But what are you going to do differently this time?
This time will be different because. So how the difference between that and mid volume are basically the hard workouts there's more intervals and they're longer. I think I respond really well to those 2 hours and 90-minute sweet spot intervals. Whew. But the Wednesday
not intervals, but workouts.
Workouts.
2 hour 90-minute sweet spot interval might be pretty tough.
That'd be hard.
Yeah.
The Wednesday ones were more aerobic, like the petit and kind of backsterish ones. I am taking those out.
I was just going to say, even those can be destructive. I mean,
they're too much for me.
Yeah.
I know
for sure.
I feel worse after those days, not better.
Does this mean you're going to drop down the occurrence of Baxter in your ride feed?
Yeah.
Yeah, but see, those aren't recovery rides. Those are endurance rides.
Yeah, those are aerobic rides. Those aren't recovery rides.
There are people that are like, there's a drinking game about that, I think, with this podcast.
Well, sober people.
Maybe some sober folks now.
But I'm doing the 45, at least my plan that I put so far on TrainerRoad's calendar, now available, TrainerRoad.com.
Subtle plug.
I have the 45 minutes. 1 hour at 45% FTP, and that's a custom workout that I created with our workout creator. And then the question is on Fridays, it's like petit is scheduled. That might be too much. I'm going to try to do it, but I don't want what could be hard is Thursday's a 90-minute, Saturday and Sunday are 2 hours. So on Friday, if Friday puts me back at all, Saturday and Sunday get really hard. And
exactly.
So, they could be too hard for me because the regular high volume is too much for me. Some people would, it's just right, and some people it's too or not enough. But just the idea of kind of some of those aerobic rides, taking those out and putting these type of rides in, that's also easier mentally.
That's an across-the-board recommendation. Anytime you're struggling with your training and your hard days, you just can't do what's necessary to hit the numbers you're supposed to hit, derive the benefit where the is intended. It can be simply because those easy days aren't easy enough. I mean, who knew? Everybody knows. But 65% might not be easy enough. 55% might not be easy enough. So, but I do still want you to get on the bike. I mean, there are some days where I'm just too tired to even throw a leg over the saddle, so you don't. But most of the time, you can get on for 30 minutes at 45% of threshold, derive a benefit, be recovered, be fresh for those upcoming rides, and you're not off the mark. You didn't fail because you decided to take a ride that was 90 minutes at 65% and tone it down to 30 minutes at 45%.
You might think nothing is happening, but based on what you just said,
there is.
And I totally feel that I get, every time I do a 45% one, I lean out a bit. And like, it's probably all in my head, but I'm like, ooh, your arms got more vascular. Like, it's just.
If it motivates you.
Exactly.
Thing,
yeah,
right?
But no, that's real.
Yeah.
Like, I can't watch TV at the really intense stuff, and even sweet spot, I switch between TV and music. But at 45%, I can watch Downton Abbey. Like,
read a
I can
book.
watch anything.
I can read when I do recovery rides.
Yeah.
Process.
I was reading
written
yesterday.
words.
It's fun. Like, it's the de-stressor, but
Yeah.
you're also improving your fitness, even though it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, awesome. That covers it for this week in terms of the questions that we'll be covering that have been submitted. If you are with us live, stay with us, and we'll answer some of the questions you submitted as we've been talking throughout the podcast. If you want to subscribe to this podcast, you can do so on pretty much any podcast app you use. You can tap the subscribe thing. That way you don't miss an episode when it comes up. You can also subscribe on YouTube, so then you get notifications of when we go live, which is a helpful thing to do. If you're curious about what we're doing at TrainerRoad, you can go to TrainerRoad.com, and you can check out all the stuff that we're building there. Head over to the forum.trainerroad.com, and that's all the places that you can keep in touch with us and learn more. If you are a listener to the podcast, please share it. We appreciate that, and we will talk to you all next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye. I almost missed that one. I was reading questions.
Okay, I'm on YouTube. You're on Facebook?
Yeah, Alvin says mountain biking is a full contact sport. Oh, I don't want to race against you, Alvin. Like, occasionally you touch, but not on purpose.
Yeah, it's not intentionally so. That's like when people say soccer is a full contact sport. Like, soccer is way more full contact than mountain biking, people. But even then,
it's not intended to be.
Yeah, even then, soccer isn't intended to be. Yeah. So, it's not like football or rugby, right? Where you're supposed to hit each other.
Jez says, sleeping on a 24. Come on, lads, get the solo entries in. I have no desire to do a 24-hour.
No.
I didn't even want to do Leadville. Why would I want to double Leadville?
Yeah,
more than double.
No.
Yeah, more.
Like, and I can totally.
No.
I can understand where people would be motivated to do that sort of thing for sure. Like, I can.
Yeah.
Is it because they're crazy?
Yeah,
they're
like,
mentally deficient?
Well, no, not at all. That's
Nice.
terrible.
How many people?
Bleep that out.
No, I think there's some.
But the thing,
Graham people.
I feel like that's a challenge, a massive challenge. And for people that are putting themselves in situations where they really want to find an opportunity to outdo themselves or whatever they think that they can do, you're putting yourself in a great spot to be able to do that, right? For me, my motivations for racing and riding don't include that.
I'm joking, everyone.
Mentally skewed, not deficient.
Skewed compared to you, but maybe normal.
Totally.
Maybe you're skewed,
exactly.
right?
Skewed by my definition.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Okay, somebody says, I'm coming off of doing Sweet Spot Base, the second part of Sweet Spot Base 2 times, they say. Would you recommend modifying traditional base, the traditional base build plan? I'm not sure if you mean the build plan. I assume you mean the build plan if you've already done Sweet Spot Base. Nope, you mean traditional base. So they're saying, would you mean modifying, or would you intend or recommend modifying traditional base to give me and using that after these Sweet Spot Base plans? The thought process is Leadville is their main goal for the year, so they're thinking that if you did traditional base and modified that, it would give them longer time in the saddle.
It could be a good endurance block, just to get away from there's a sufficient amount of stress hormonally and muscularly and all that comes with sweet spot training, and a lot of sweet spot training, which sounds like you've done quite a lot of it. So it might be a good departure, a temporary departure for a couple weeks. I mean, I don't know that I go through an entire 12 weeks of it.
I wouldn't do it, yeah.
That's quite a long block, but
if
4 weeks of it.
Yeah, if you're looking at volume, I would recommend the first part of traditional base because that's where you actually end up getting the most like low intensity, high volume stuff or long duration stuff. Thereafter, the intensity changes and things actually get a little shorter in some respects.
Yeah, if you're carrying a high amount of fitness, I'm not sure. Did she say which volume?
Nope,
okay.
No volume. Yep.
So you might not be able to derive that much of a training benefit after a particular amount of time. So doing it for 8 or 12 weeks, you might plateau well into the earlier phases. That's a concern.
Question: are there apps like Tapatalk that can work with the new TrainerRoad form? You don't need it. It works fantastic on your phone as is. So,
but there is an app called Discourse,
Yep.
which is what it's built on, and you can add TrainerRoad to that, and then you get notifications on your phone for messages. But basically, Discourse is when you load it, it just loads the web-based version, because the web-based version is made to work really well on mobile.
Yep. Yeah. So notifications for that sort of thing, like push notifications to your phone. Otherwise, you'll always have notifications if you log in and you can see them and scroll through them. But for push notifications, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
It's much better than Tapatalk.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It's so much better. So.
Joey asks, what training plan on TrainerRoad would be great for a muscular 205-pound guy who wants to get down to 180 pounds and try endurance mountain bike races this year or next year? Currently just started base building volume 2, and I'm in the first week. So this is you have a perplexed look.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, what this person wants to do is train.
Okay.
Because there's two different parts. The losing the weight is going to be more nutrition and like how you eat. And Joey, I think it's much easier to lose muscle than to lose fat. So if you're going to be losing, like dropping 20 pounds of muscle, don't lift weights and eat a little less.
Yeah.
But in general, for endurance mountain biking, sweet spot base, probably general or sustained build, and then XCO, not XCO, the marathon mountain biking plan we have.
Mm-hmm.
That would be definitely it. So if you started with sweet spot base,
Yep.
What you're in the right one. And then just pick the volume level based on what you can do. And don't, if you're new to this, start in low.
Yeah.
So you can get consistent, kind of what we talked about
That's
before.
always the best way to do it. Is to start lower
Did
than
I nail it, Chad?
Yeah, so much of it is dietary too. So don't look at training as the easiest, most obvious way for weight loss or body composition changes. A lot of that happens dietarily. So the training is kind of icing on that cake.
We have a question that, first of all, one that says, when Jonathan says he posted his goals, where was this posted? This was just posted on a ride that I did, and people followed, or on Strava. People can see it there.
Plug your name's easy, Jonathan Lee.
Yeah, it's easy.
That's easy to spell.
I think that's the first time I've plugged it, Nate. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, he's going to get more followers than me. It's okay. You can follow both of us. We've already know that.
He just jumped right on that train really quick, didn't he? Okay. One imaginary boy, that's the name of the person here, says, "Hi, I'm 48, and on basically every ride I start to," and he says in quotes, "suffer when I hit 152 beats per minute. I just hit a wall and have to stop and catch my breath. How should I train to develop higher resistance? Thanks."
Ooh.
So this is this is a big question. You can go at it a lot of different ways. Nate, you're eager.
First thing, you need to take your heart rate monitor off, because if you say every time I hit 152,
it's pretty specific.
Yeah, and it should be changing day to day where you're training. Like, it's not going to be the same each time. So I'm going to say first, you have a mental barrier and stop wearing your heart rate monitor.
Yeah.
Or stop looking at it anyway.
It's hard to stop looking at it when you think that at 152 you have to stop.
Yeah.
Put tape over it, still record it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way. Yeah.
I guess the main point here is when you say, I just hit a wall and have to stop and catch my breath, how should I train to develop higher resistance?
Yeah, see, it's a ceiling of some sort, but basing it on heart rate, I don't know what ceiling you're talking about. I need to know relative to your capabilities. If that 152 is a high percentage of your max heart rate or lactate threshold heart rate, that would be a bit more meaningful. But I'd really like to put this in power terms and know, what percentage of your capabilities you're working at and tell you how to fix it from there.
And what duration, because there's two. That's why I say it's a block, because you could, let's say you're doing a threshold interval and it creeps up to that and you're like, oh, once it's 152, I have to stop.
Yeah.
And then there's a VO2 max interval. It gets there a totally different way. And I would argue that
and there's anaerobic work where it might not get there until you're done working.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's different ways to do it. I don't use your heart rate as your bench. Say,
so
a better way to say it would
at 48, 152, maybe that's threshold territory. So maybe you just need to improve your stamina. So you need to, sweet spot work is really good at extending time at or near threshold.
Yeah. I've heard that John Tomac's heart rate was like 120 max or something like that. So, I mean,
Sure.
It all depends, right? Well, some people have 220.
It varies widely.
It's really tricky. Heart rate's tricky. Phil says, I'm a roadie but likes to climb. I've found that for long climbs, 20 to 30 minutes, it's not all that different from a TT in terms of effort. Yeah, indeed. I do think you should, and then he says, do you think I should look at a base plan to start? Here's an interesting thing that I've found is that people that are time trialists also tend to be extremely good climbers, as long as they're not
carries really
particularly
nicely.
heavy.
Yeah.
And I feel like we learned also from TTing that was probably one of the best ways for like us, like if you want to build really good fitness across the board, like TT training usually just focuses on raising that threshold, right? And it's like a really good way to make sure that you are just a force to be reckoned with across a broad variety of disciplines. So yeah, hill climbing, whatever else it is. Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Alvin says in caps, do yoga. Then he says, why don't you guys promote yoga more?
I guess it's
if
just...
you can weave it into the training tapestry, you've got
an extra hour of yoga.
Yeah, I mean, if you can, it's a good form of I don't know, flexibility training. A bit of strength work is involved, but it's all kind of isometric, and it doesn't lend itself to the type of adaptations we're after. I mean, if you have flexibility issues, it's a great way to address it. But in terms of strengthening, some people say that there's a strength component to it, but it's just static poses for long periods of time.
It's very different than what you do on the bike.
It's not going to make you a stronger athlete. It's not going to improve your endurance. I do see the flexibility side of things and maybe the mental focus side of things. But again, this would be sprinkles on top of the icing on top of the cake. It's
maybe you can be more specific. Is that what you're saying if you're going to take that time?
Yeah, I just would like to know why specifically yoga. You know, what benefits in particular do you think we're missing out on that yoga can provide for us?
I'm sure Alvin is furiously typing right now.
Okay, cool. So let's get a reply.
Yeah, it's I've worked yoga into my program in the past with the real intent of trying to address injuries.
Well, let me say I like yoga a lot.
Yeah.
Quite a lot.
And the one thing that I can say is that while I noticed benefits in other aspects of my life, I didn't actually notice like a benefit in increased control through the pedal stroke of my knee or anything else like that. And I kind of felt like it was just a very different stress that I was putting my muscles under than what I experienced.
But it is, though. It's another form of training stress. So it's going to have to come at the expense of something else, or you're going to increase your training load. So that's why I want to know what about it in particular do you think we're missing out?
Yeah, absolutely. Aaron says, how do you typically pace a cyclocross race if you're just pack fill and not near the front of the pack? Thanks to the great content and awesome training app. If you're pack fill and not toward the front of the pack, I absolutely advocate for not going like crazy off the gun, right? Like if you don't have to stay with that front group, in cyclocross, you see so many people start extremely hard and then it ends up hurting them at the end. And if you aren't a type of person that knows that you have to stick with the front group, man, I would start within yourself and then slowly rise or keep that consistent. And I bet you'll pick a lot of folks off.
Such a hard thing to do in a cross race.
Oh, I know,
is to start conservatively while everybody rides away from you.
And you can it's like a race within the race, right? You can, it's fun when there's say the leaders are 4 minutes up, but you have a group
You'll
of
get
4
your
or 5
group.
people.
Yeah, it'll form.
And then you're racing there, and that's your own, imagine that's first place, and you're doing tactics against them.
Yeah.
Like, you don't need to be in
every race. It kind of whittles down to 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 maybe riders who are within reach or who are behind you, and you're trying to keep away.
Totally. Yeah.
Craig says, just about to get the indoor winter training started. However, I'm injured with a glute med tear. How long until I do an FTP test?
That's not a question for us.
Yeah, like ask your doctor.
Yeah, doctor sign off, because that's an injury that you will absolutely
like don't train with a muscle tear.
Yeah. I mean, especially that one. That's bad news. That advice is going to have to come from someone other than us.
Oh, injury. This reminded me of something that we should say. Wes Thompson, remember when we thought he tore his calf?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think he tore his calf. I think he broke his leg because he posted up a picture on Instagram of his lower leg, a smaller lower leg bone. I can never remember which one. Fibula. And it's broken.
Good Lord.
He broke his leg?
So he ran 13 miles on a broken lower leg.
Yeah. Pretty amazing, right?
Or did he break it during his run?
I almost wonder if he broke it in the swim. Remember when it got kicked and he said it was so extremely painful?
Or he did both.
And then it just and then he rode on it, and then once he was running, just bam.
But if he tore the muscle and didn't have the support necessary, and then he fractured it as a result.
Let us know, Wes.
Yeah, I saw that X-ray and it made me cringe.
That's an Ironman.
That's
holy smokes.
That's gnarly.
And he still did like an 11 something.
Oh my gosh. That's so impressive.
Oh my God.
Hopefully that, and I'd say this is strange, but hopefully that actually was from Kona, and hopefully, Wes, that isn't from something that happened after Kona, and you just posted it without explanation. So Hopefully that's the case.
I just got
man.
the shivers.
Yeah, can you imagine? It's hard enough to do one.
Stress fracture forming too, and then
That's what I was thinking. A
and then
stress
just let go.
fracture, and then maybe it could have been a stress fracture, and maybe he got kicked. That had nothing to do with it. And then when he was running,
And
it
he's
gave
still
way.
finished.
Yeah.
He's so much tougher than I am.
Oh yeah.
That's so. Oh yeah.
No,
Makes
me
sense.
too.
everybody, pretty much everybody.
Exactly. Okay. I reckon that's probably about it over here on YouTube.
Taylor says, I have 4 weeks before state cyclocross. The course has 3 20-second climbs around 4%. Could you guys recommend some key workouts? So I'm guessing what it sounds like is Taylor wants to, like each lap is going to have 20-second, like kind of make or break individual things. So Chad's kind of, basically what you would do is turn on the VO2 max. Chad's going to tell you exactly here in a second.
It might be more anaerobic in nature. I look at a workout like Kearsarge. Excuse me, it's KEARSARGE. That's it's kind of in line with it, and you could experiment with which of those intensities. They're short efforts, they're 20 seconds. So 18, 24, 20. So right in that same realm, and you can see what sort of power output you can repeat because you're obviously, if that's 4 times per lap and you're going to be doing multiple laps, it's going to have to be highly repeatable. So take a look at that workout, and there are others. You can just plug it, just look at just check the anaerobic tick box for zones, and
I would say too, maybe
get some ideas.
That one, and then also if that was on like a Tuesday, maybe a Thursday doing sassafras or however you say that.
Sassafras? Yeah, any of those, the high recovery, or the ones where you're only recovering at 88% instead of dropping down to 40 and getting sufficient recovery. So insufficient recovery repeats, the reduced amplitude billouts. Those are in line with it, but those are more about really short punches and really short rests and doing it again.
So what I'm thinking on that one is, instead of training like the workout that you said, is you're training like your max 20-minute power.
No, not at all. They're stacked.
Oh, it is stacked?
It's similar. So take that.
Oh yeah, they're pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That workout is instantly what came to mind when you described that. So I would at least look at it or find something similar to it.
So the other one is you're at like 88% FTP, then you go up for maybe
120, 115.
I think it's like 20 seconds.
They're short. Yep.
You go up to like I think it's over 120 or 125, somewhere in there.
Yeah. In there.
And you do that repeatedly. And the reason why I think about that is, depending on the course, he might be at 8 for a while leading into this climb.
Totally.
That's
and then
very likely.
You're not going to be hitting as high. So I think both of them together.
High race specificity, so that's going to be more applicable to race day, but you're 4 weeks out. So I would start with stuff like Kearsarge and move into stuff like what Nate's
I
describing.
would say doing both. Tuesday, Thursday.
You can, absolutely. Totally.
Yeah, as long as you don't overwork yourself. I'm going to rip through a couple from the forum really quick. So this is from the forum, so you can go over there, forum.trainerroad.com. Tib, you're on, the first one, although he cleverly has Thai hyphen. I bet he has a Thai bike. So it says, when I do some stretches after riding, quad stretching with lunges, for example, I find that the soles and arches of my feet try to cramp. I've tried rolling the soles of my feet with a small hard massage ball, which gives some short-term relief, but boy, does it hurt. Any other suggestions? I've had this happen before driving home. I think it was last year from Mark Pro Camp, and I had to drive straight home after that, and I was driving, and I was getting arch cramps. Oh,
I think
painful.
the stress our feet are under is underrated, highly underrated,
gosh.
especially if you don't have ample or sufficient arch support.
Yes.
There's so much muscle tension you have to carry because your shoe's not doing it for you that I used to experience the same thing, and they're miserable.
Yeah, ever since I've gone to custom insoles for my weird feet, you don't need custom insoles maybe. Maybe you just need to, put in the more
slap
arch
some
support
super
or something.
feet in there or something.
Yep, but ever since I've done that, I haven't had issues with this.
Same here.
In skiing,
Different
I get it
shoes,
even
too.
worse, by the way.
Yes.
Skiing, I get it even worse.
Yeah,
So,
another strong case for custom insoles, but even different shoes. I've switched shoes that had higher arch support, and that toned the problem down too.
yep. So that's what I would recommend. Then another one from Eric says, how do you manage efforts during group rides when on a plan? Ooh, that's the age-old question
You
right
don't
there.
group ride.
Yeah.
No, just decide it's going to be something else.
No,
you can try.
You
can
just
try.
have to replace one of those workouts, and then know that depending on how big it is, it's going to affect your next day's workout too.
Yeah, Eric,
Weave it in.
Yeah,
Eric
but trying
says-
to do a very specific workout in a group setting,
Oh,
it's a hard
do it.
thing to balance.
Oh, I
Yeah,
say
yeah.
don't do that.
Oh, no,
just completely say this Saturday is not going to happen on TrainerRoad. It's going to be a group ride now.
Yeah. It says, should you be focused being efficient and minimizing effort so that you don't blow up your weekly TSS? I can easily put in a 250 to 300 TSS effort over 5 hours if I'm not paying attention, which costs me when going back to the structured workouts.
And there it is. How beneficial do you find those rides? If those rides are keeping your fitness on an upward slant, then that's not a bad training substitution. But if it's coming at the expense of the rest of your training and things are trending downward, well, it's too much.
And motivation. Like, if you find that these things are like what you live for each week and you're with your friends and it's like wonderful and you're outside and you're having fun, totally do it. But just know that I wouldn't then try to do Sunday's workout. Like, maybe really Sunday is off, or Sunday's that like recovery ride that we talked about. Especially if it's 300 TSS, like it's going to be really hard to do a Sunday ride.
Oh yeah.
I don't even know if I'd do that heading into a recovery week. That's just a big influx.
It depends on. So if you have if you are it all depends, as everything does. But I could see someone doing a Tuesday interval, a Thursday interval, a Saturday 5. That's it for their week. That could be maintainable, depending. Like Jonathan could totally do that, right, and probably gain fitness on just that. It's all relative. It's so hard for us to say you could take this and you couldn't take this without really knowing all the details of your life.
Yeah. If there's ever a group ride that I plan to do, it replaces a workout.
Yeah, I'd plan on making a group ride. Just that. It's the group ride.
Yep.
If you want to try to simulate intervals, I mean, it's not that it can't be done, but it's pretty tough.
Chris.
Yeah.
Chris has got a multi-part question. I'm a 3-time Ironman finisher and quit/road race in the last 1.5 years. Had multiple wins and podiums. Would you agree with the statement that for Ironman or 70.3, the fittest always wins for bike racing? And I'm sorry, the fittest always wins, and for bike racing, the most tactical racer always wins. And he said he's asking because he's considering going back to try to shoot for a Kona slot. And he says, my swim is sub 1 hour. My bike should now be less than 5, and he can run at least a 3:30, hoping to qualify for Kona.
That's qualifying worthy.
Totally. You got to put them all together.
Yep.
But let's talk about that, where the fittest always wins in Ironman versus the fittest always wins in, or the most tactical in bike racing.
You still have to be pretty tactically savvy to be competitive in Ironman, though.
Oh, totally.
So, at least in respect to pacing.
Pacing,
those are tactics.
Pacing and nutrition, like I don't care how fit you are, if you screw up your pacing or nutrition, you're not going to have a
So it's not without some tactical demands, but
I'd say it's 98.2% for in triathlon, where a lot of times even for Kona qualifiers,
weighted, right? That two's weighted. It can make a big difference.
It's more of execution stuff rather than like I am racing shoulder to shoulder with Jonathan, and I'm going to attack hard here to like break his will. You look at the Ironman Kona qualifier, sometimes it is like a 10 or 15 second gap, but a lot of times it's 10 minutes.
Totally.
Like the tactical part doesn't come into effect, maybe a little bit. Bike racing, obviously it's a lot of fitness. If you're at 5 watts per kilo and I'm at 4 watts per kilo, I don't care how tactically savvy I am.
It's pretty unlikely.
I'm going to beat you. Yeah. But if you're at, let's say high. Let's say I'm at 4.8 and you're at 5.
Yeah.
I could beat you on tactics.
It's fair game.
Yep, exactly.
So I feel like any absolute, attribution for a win, like saying that it's just fitness that makes a person win an Ironman, or it's just tactics that makes somebody win a bike race. Obviously, absolutes don't really exist on that level, especially with such dynamic races going on.
It's absolute at a certain difference in fitness.
Yeah, I see what you mean there. Yeah.
Okay,
but
Craig Alexander.
Maybe you take a guy who's 5'5", put him off the front for 45 minutes of a 50-minute crit. You take a guy who's 3'5", who sits in the whole time and out sprints him.
No, I'm talking about Ironman.
Comes down to tactics.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Ironman.
Sure. Yeah, like you take a pro versus me. I don't care how technically sound I am.
Agreed.
I will lose every time.
Agreed.
Yeah. Chad's like, I totally agree with that.
You especially.
Yeah. So I don't know. I've seen so many people like when Pete comes like fresh into the season, or last year he like came in and he wasn't fit at all. He still races so well.
Yeah.
He's so hard to beat.
Yeah. You can overcome your fitness a lot better in cycling. How Chad said is
via tactics and your ability to suffer.
Well, yeah, it's just sitting in, like you said, like you can have an entirely easy race and have 1 minute or 30 seconds of power versus someone else can have 45 minutes of pain, and the 1 minute person will probably beat the 45-minute person.
Awesome. Okay. With that, well, thanks for joining us, everybody, live. Once again, next week we will be live on Wednesday because Chad is going to a coaching summit.
Yeah, I'm going to the USAC coaching summit happens every couple of years, and then I'm tacking on another clinic at the end of that on I think lactate threshold testing.
Ooh, cool.
Pretty cool.
So Chad's going to go do that, and then we actually have all the TrainerRoad employees in the office next week, so it's going to be a busy one.
Yeah.
But Wednesday, join us live. It's going to be 8 a.m. Pacific, so the normal time, just different day. And we'll talk to you all then. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.